dinner tonight. If you haven't signed up for the dinner, we're capped at 50 people by the restaurant. We still have some headroom, so if you haven't signed up and you want to come, please let me know as soon as possible. We're also going to deeply explore challenging issues. In the past, Legal Hackers summits have been very, very regimented with lots of people moving around and trying to get as much in as we possibly can. It's like our one annual opportunity. This year, we totally blew apart that model. We're going to try something different. We're going to have long workshops where you have an opportunity to really go deep and think through some of the most challenging issues at the intersection of law and technology and build a template for the next 10 years. Not only on those issues, but then also setting the agenda for Legal Hackers over the course of the next decade. Here's the schedule. Like I said, it's on legalhackers.org. We're going to have some lightning talks this morning. We'll have lunch. We'll have a keynote from Jonathan Askin, which I'm really, really excited about. And then we're going to have workshops over the course of the afternoon, starting with a plenary, breaking down to smaller groups, breaking down to even smaller groups, coming all the way back up to another plenary. And then we're going to end the day with a photo, and then we're going to head off to dinner. Tomorrow is designed for organizers of Legal Hackers. If you are an organizer of Legal Hackers, I really hope you can come tomorrow. If you're not an organizer but you would like to be, definitely come tomorrow. You can help shape the discussion for Legal Hackers in the next 10 years. Jonathan's going to keynote. Our workshops, go look online. You can see it says exactly this online, so there's no new information there, but we're going to focus on the future of law practice, the future of legal hacking for social impact, and the future of legal education. Think now which of those workshops you're going to want to be in. I strongly recommend choosing one and sticking to that one for the duration of the event. I mentioned all of this before, but just open your thinking, be respectful of others. Let's seek out each other and build really meaningful connections. I look forward to all the stories and the friendships and all of the great workshops and conversations you'll have over the course of this event. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And we're going to get kicked off with some lightning talk. So a round of applause to all of you. Okay, great. So first up is Regina from Kyiv Legal Hackers. Now let's see, Jonathan, how can I do this on the Zoom?
She's in Kiev?
She's not in Kyiv. I think she's in Poland right now.
So she should share her screen. Oh, wait, we might have to make her a co-host, and I think I have to do that on.
Okay. Great. Regina, we're coming for you.
I hope you sound me well.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, great. First of all, everyone, I'm so glad to see you, even from webcam, but hopefully I have a chance to talk with you. It means that it's not so awful as can be, because unfortunately in Ukraine it's war, but it's not time for problem without legal tech. So my name is Regina Bondrenko, and I'm honored to represent Kyiv Legal Hackers, because today legal tech become not just a very comfortable and useful instrument, but unfortunately today legal tech in Ukraine is a front of defense for refugees, war victims, also personal data and collecting evidence. Also, we collect the evidence for future court proceeding. So today, legal tech is not just a service, but unfortunately and hopefully, it's helped million people not get lost in this war, also get support and defend their future. I have a few examples how legal tech have impact in the wartime, and of course why its value increase in every second. First, I start from government initiatives, legal tech initiatives app DIA. People in Ukraine with DIA have ID card, tax number, and also another primary personal documents. So now with this DIA app, people can get not only their own document, but for them it's become life jacket, because people who survive under missiles, tanks, other weapons that burn their houses, they have only DIA to improve who they are. So it's the one key to get help, cross the borders, and also sometimes even searching relatives. Also, DIA become the full service uh, for almost all government services. It means that now, for example, we can apply for financial support from DIA. Also, we can apply refund if our house broken and register it as internal refugee. Another great example from the another side, business side, we have two great and biggest open data projects for monitoring government registers. Its names uControl and Open Data Bot. And I must say that 2 months over the beginning of the war, there was the single opportunity to improve your property rights, legal status as head of company, and of course some historical practice of this status. So Open Data Bot and control and you control company. It's totally private company, but they become the support for government, population, and of course other businesses. They become a key to approve your not just individual but also your property, your rights, and some important moments in legal life. They provide their help because they only have excellent user experience, and of course they have copies of all data that needs governments. Also, legal tech product in the first meaning provides legal assistance in Ukraine in this time also. Legal tech products become the, I think, the single access to legal help, because unfortunately 40%, 60% of all governments legal help centers and some labor and also lawyer centers was closed because of attacks and unfortunately the Burka's attacks or the missile attacks. That's why legal tech, the digital solution, become the single advice for you. You have only your phone and maybe 2 or 3 products that can help you. So legal helps also in legal tech product becomes provider of legal advice, and our collaboration as community help us to stay in life in this moment. Why show that legal services and products in force majeure conditions become not just service but support for government, people, and businesses. Quick reaction of all chains helps Ukraine not to fall to barbarian epoch. We could defend our life in physical, financial, and digital levels because we have support from government and also from our tech services. Also, war show the value and force of community. Existing of friendly and vibrant legal tech community in Ukraine help us launch a lot of digital solution in one day, because you have support not only by your own team but the whole ecosystems and other startups, funds who can support you, and also government who help implement your solutions. So our community, and of course not only community in Ukraine but outside Ukraine too, including legal hackers, help, for example, Kiev legal hackers chapters to us create the advisor for Ukrainian refugees who are unfortunately outside the Ukraine, but they also need our support because a lot of them don't know English, and of course they don't know about their right of refugees because it's unsimilar situation for them. I know that a lot of you become not just part of our pro bono net, but also take part in creation guidelines for refugees. And of course, I want to say thank you from all my heart because you become incredible round of these great initiatives. I must say that because of you, with your help, we have a great initiatives, the great ecosystem of pro bono help for Ukrainians who outside of Ukraine. Now we cover 15 countries in Europe, and also every day we help 10,000 people who are related from Ukraine, got help not in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Poland, Italy, Spain, in other countries. It's also your help us to create these great things, and I also want to say thank you everyone who helped us. That's why as a finish I want to summarize and give you 2 important thoughts. that I unfortunately get from the VA. First of all, legal tech products now is not just about service. It's not just about your business. War in Ukraine show that international systems have a gaps. For example, transferring data, adapting the process of migrants, and of course collecting evidence and documents. We see that how redesign the value of legal tech product and IT value of every legal process moments. So we must start to redesign and rethink our process in government, in business, and also in civil level communication. So I think that these changes must be leading by legal tech community as we review. So the second one, it's the trend of legal tech is worldwide. For example, Estonia pre-ordered DIA for themselves. Apple adds digital and personal documents in their wallet. Also, as you know, international work on document flow in blockchain based. So as you see, all actions prove that legal tech become a hot trend. And I think in a few years, we see a lot of changes in every aspect of our life. So that's why it's the beginning of the huge way, and I think it's important step for our as community legal hackers to start pushing this trend, to start collaborate with governments and ourselves to create a great initiatives like ecosystem for Ukrainian refugees at Switchland with you. Kyiv Legal Hackers already involved some chapters in our work, but this year I think we make more events with you, and I hope it will be louder than worse. So my ask for you, collaborate. It's time to integrate our experience, to share our experience, to create something really great, because it's the beginning of the changes, and I hope everyone will be in this boat. So let's start to collaborate, and I hope that legal tech become a new Bitcoin in IT sector. So thank you. Let's collaborate. If you want to contact me, scan the QR code, not for the type, scan the QR code, and of course, keep in touch.
We have 1 minute if anyone has a question for Regina. Okay.
Just one maybe.
Yeah, do you want to take the microphone right there?
No, just in general. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I hope you're holding up under the situation. Right? Thank you very much. You seem very upbeat, and I don't know how you manage that. Very cheerful. Thank you so much.
I don't.
I don't know.
Regina. Tom says thank you from the bottom of his heart, and I think we all say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more round of applause for Regina. Next up, we have Bernardo Vanderlat. Yep, come on up. Yeah, would you mind muting that?
Like Call of Duty, like many other positions, it's fantastic that you're in this. It's fantastic that you're
Well,
this great school. It's fantastic the agents that are working with you to bring knowledge to you.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Bernardo Anderlat. I represent the Costa Rican chapter, and I'm glad to be here with you. So, the whole point of my presentation today, of my lighting talk, is going to be to discuss a little bit the reason why of hacking the legal profession. And sometimes I think that we talk a lot about innovation and disruption, but I think that at the end we all have very different ideas or concepts of why are we here? Why are we hacking the legal industry? And I think that the reason, or one of the main reasons, is to improve the services and to deliver our clients real value. And the definition of value is, I think, is very subjective. So I'm going to throw a little bit of some points here, some opinions, and maybe we can play around later. So, for example, sorry. In Costa Rica, and I know this is the case for other jurisdictions in Latin America, we are, or legal fees, for example, are defined by law. So you, as a professional, are required to stick to a set of fixed fees, of mandatory fees. Charging less or a different amount may be considered unfair competition, and you can be subject to a sanction, okay? And why I'm telling you this? I'm telling you this because to make a clear point that right now, delivering value to a client goes beyond pricing. It's no longer strictly related to numbers, okay? So how can you really deliver a value to a client? I think that, and this aligns a lot to the mantra of legal hackers, which is technology and sustainability. And in terms of technology, I really believe that in order to deliver a value to your client, you really have to go the extra mile and understand exactly what your client needs. What does the market offers? Whether there are any tools out in the market that will really make a fit and make your client's processes more efficient, the delivery of legal services better, or whether it would be better for your client to develop its own tool. I think that you, as legal technologists, are required to go, as I said, that extra mile and understand that. Then, in terms of sustainability, I think that I refer to sustainability in terms of environmental impact and also social impact. Right now, you see clients, you see organizations that they are looking forward to do business with providers that respect certain values, certain core values that align to their principles. So you, as a provider, as a company, as a firm, organization, as a solo practitioner, you're required now more than ever to make a positive impact in the environment, in your community, and of course in your employees. So basically that's the idea of sharing this topic, that it may be, as I said, very subjective, but I just want to throw it here, and maybe we can play around with that throughout that day. Thank you.
Okay, so what I need to do here is, yeah, it's this one.
Legal design thinking.
Yep. Perfect.
That one.
Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan, for your help.
Can't read.
Did you do it right? Maybe you need to use the one.
Oh,
with
it's
the
right here.
desktop.
Oh no.
This is a clicker.
Mm-hmm.
That clicker will work, yeah.
Oh, it's because this isn't on the desktop. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Got it. Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. It's screwing up because of this, but this will work.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. And we'll do slideshow. Beginning, and then this one. Go like that, and then share screen. No, that's the wrong thing to do. This window, yeah?
No, it's this
Yeah.
one.
Oh, this one here. Okay. All right.
Thank
It's
you
all
so
yours.
much. Hi, well, I'm Hilda. I come from Aguascalientes, Mexico, and I'm a professor at Tec de Monterrey, Campus Monterrey. So today I'm here. Thank you, Jameson, to being so kind and helped me through this process to even be here today standing. And also want to thank my university who sponsor me, as well as Mila Agencia and all my colleagues in Legal Hackers in Mexico who are rooting for me and have been cheering me up to come here and share my experience with you all. So what I'm going to share today is actually what I do in the classroom, right? So my main concern, as James has just stated, is how do we actually get more people in Legal Hackers, right? So me as a teacher, as a professor in the university, I'm trying always to think how I can make this intersection between law and technology more fun and more accessible, more tangible for my students. So the project is called Legal Design Thinking from Classroom to the Community, and what okay. So how did everything started? Everything started through the pandemic. That's my drawing of coronavirus, sorry. So that's supposed to be a virus. And when everything came through this coronavirus, I always have given my classes through the computer, right? I already have 12 years as a professor, and in this time, that's when I actually got worried and how to interact with my students. I'm so Mexican, right? I want to hug them, I want to be with them, I want to get along with them, make them understand, shake their heads, and actually give the law in their hands and then do something with it, right? So as Mexican, I got really depressed when I had to do everything through a computer. And I had to rethink how to get those brains and my brain together. And I had to think about these challenges. First, the different learning methods now through a computer, which is different than, when you're face-to-face. So what is doable? What can I do for these kids, right? And for me, sorry, I said kids because I'm a mom and I will always see them as my kids, but well, to these students, right? So what is doable? What can I do for them in this manner? Second, I thought about the challenges, right? The difficulties that they may have and they're maybe not conscious. I remember one kid having a panic attack through the computer while he was having a test, right? And then I became a psychologist as well, and mantra caller. And I was like, put your hand in your heart and deep breathe, close your eyes, and I tried to calm him down, and so he will be more comfortable. And all these difficulties that you may not be conscious about them, right? And just happened. You need to be helpful, and you need to be also a bridge, right? As a professor. So then the third point is which abilities they're not acquiring. I need to think about them, right? So the first thing is to create awareness as well as empathy. And more in this world, more nowadays, we need more empathy in our students. So then I thought about beautiful legal design thinking that also comes from lovely University Stanford. And then I was like, well, how can I do this in Tec de Monterrey, and how can I create this bridge between the classroom and the community? And how can I just make this hidden logic that the students have? And I remember me as a student, it was different and it was difficult to get this logic outside so I could understand law, I could understand what I was going through and be helpful as a lawyer, right? So I have two groups right now. So one is from international contracts, and the other one is from legal tech subject. And I have different profiles. I have LED, which is law, international business, which is LIN, then finance administration, and technology and innovation. Those are the degrees, okay? Those are the letters. And then for legal tech, I have social science as well as engineers. So it's even more fun, right? Because I could play with them, and I could get more ideas and more innovation through them. So I have from the Faculty of Engineering and Social Studies, I have engineering systems, electric, innovation and design, finance, administration, and international business and law. So as you can see, it's very broad. And I decided to work with this beautiful company in my community. This company is called Lácteos del Camino. Today I have brought cheeses for you. Yeah, I have traveled from all the way from Aguascalientes with cheeses for all of you. I also have beans, and I have brought keychains from Aguascalientes. And they have been really kind to give you guys this present, so you keep in mind what I'm and this beautiful what they do is that they actually they started with milk, cheese, yogurt, ice cream, and they're doing everything by having alliances within the community and other small enterprises and small businesses. This is a small video so you would know what they do in their factory. This is in Aguascalientes again, in the center in Mexico. And I went to talk to them and I said, hey, I have this crazy idea that maybe my students can work with you so they could help you to maybe put in the States or somewhere else your cheeses. What? Really? Why would you want to do that? And I was like, why not? So I tried to go every week and talk to them, and they would come to the classroom and back and forward so the kids will know. I will actually go with my phone and record a video of the little store and then to the factory and then send it to them so they will get to know their work. I actually came also a visit in which some of the visitors could make cheese and they would get actually to know me. So after this, I thought, okay, so how do I get them to empathize with the client, which is Lácteos del Camino? So I had to create a process within a process. And this process was to go through an internal analysis and an external analysis. And when you think about internal analysis, they had to know the company, as I said, through these videos, through this experience of the stores, the displays, their social media, what did they do within the community, inside Aguascalientes, outside Aguascalientes, if they go forward, what's the plan, what's the mission, what's the vision, right? What are their needs? So I actually set up meetings for Q&A in Zoom, so the students would ask them, hey, so you said you had two brothers, so the one brother does that? What does he do for the company? And so on and so on and so on, right? So they would have this accessible and more tangible relationship within the client and know that they will be helping a community, okay? Then the external analysis is that they went and do some research, social media and the image of the company, what they have it as a status as right now, so they will create something, they will have analysis, they will propose something. And the second point is, what is a competitive advantage? And this is very important, so they would actually get some feedback from the company and from outsiders, right? So who are their competitors and how are they succeeding? That was the main question. So let's get to work. I went again through the process of legal design thinking and had to create activities program through the syllabus and through a project for the community, because it wasn't a clinic, it's just a subject in the syllabus, right? So I had to combine both and then think, okay, how they're gonna empathize, as I said, the story behind, the awareness, the social media profile, what would be the legal aid that they will be needing, right? And define a case study. So they had to sit down and said, what did you actually do wrong in the past in this company, so they would get, right? They would get what they would need. Asking ourselves the right questions, that was really important and it was key. What do they need? And then I divide them in groups, 2 engineers and two with social studies. And then it was really fun because the engineers, they were like, what is he talking about, right? And then I had to be like a negotiator between both of these two circles. And so the main issue, the main problem that they had to solve is the international contract subject. They had to create a commercial strategy agreement with a company located in Louisiana because Lácteos del Camino has a brother that lives there and has created a company there. So he's starting to think about doing that. So we're going to help him to do that. And second is the digital marketing social network plus the legal aid and social media. So they have to think in this spider webs design thinking process in which they had to think through the actors and so on, which would be the legal instrument to be needed. So then the creation is to build up this step plan and clauses within the elements of the contract in the state of Louisiana, and compare it also within Mexico, right? So everything has to be a study as well as practice. Then the company's social media profile and create a digital identity, legal instruments that may emerge on technology used also by the company. And then when they have all of that, they have, you know, the highlights, then they go to prototype, and I create the draft club, which is also between engineers and lawyers. So it was really fun for engineers to get to know what they needed. So I had future architects of software creating a contract, which is really cool, right? And they were really pleased because now they would understand what they need. So they will do legal design thinking spider webs. And test, there will be a final presentation at the end of the semester in which they will present with the board of directors. These are the board of directors and myself getting the agreement of working together. And these are the examples. First, I had to just talk to them about legal design, in which will be the abilities and the curious, to be curious, creative, collaborative. The process, I had to teach them that. And then these are the spider webs that they created, right? Everything in Spanish, of course, but I just wanted to share what they're doing. That's the client, and we were creating it in the classroom just by asking. So they have Instagram, and someone is asking that they ship something, you know, in Texas. What do they need? And then we will be starting to create the web even there in the classroom. These are more webs, and just to end up, I want to invite you all to MexICAN, which will be our next event for all legal hackers in Mexico. And it will be on the 29th and the 30th. We had already a legal hackers in tech, which is Tec de Monterrey, my university. We had this one, and we talked about legal ops and legal hackers, as well as cybersecurity. And this was also to create awareness within the students. My main goal as a professor is to create more minds into this intersection between law and business, but mainly to create more awareness on the abilities that they have and respect their intellect as students. So thank you so much. One thing, I will have cheeses there. If you want to collect them. They have albahaca, you know, and right now they have it in the fridge, but I will give it to you.
All right, Daza, you're up next. And I think we'll need to unshare the screen. Yeah, and then there we go. How do we local browser? Oh, you want to go to the browser? Yeah. So, and you want to share the browser? Okay. So there are two things you got to do. You got to do this. Go where you gotta go, and then you know how to share the screen on Zoom.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. One moment while we calibrate. Wait a minute, where is Zoom? I think, does everybody agree I'm probably sharing this screen on Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Accept. Hi, everybody. I'm Dazza Greenwood, and I should probably introduce myself as initially a co-organizer of Massachusetts Legal Hackers, and then subsequently, when we combined Massachusetts Legal Hackers and Boston Cambridge Legal Hackers and another legal hacking group, co-organizer of Boston Legal Hackers. And then when I lived in New York, after volunteering for a while, co-organizer of New York Legal Hackers. I think I'm still on the page, so you have to get rid of me there. And now I've moved back to my hometown of Oakland, where you can find me as a co-organizer of San Francisco Legal Hackers. Thank you very much. Legal hacker. And oh, how I love legal hacking. And so this is what we're looking at right now is a blog post on my blog, which is civics.com. And you can go there and find the post called Algorithmic Entity Accountability. And why am I showing you a blog post for this flash talk? It's because sort of like opening the curtains to a interesting little legal hack that I've been contemplating lately, and that soon I'm going to try to tackle. And so I'd like to describe it to you and then see if anyone has any interesting ideas or questions, because I have not pulled the trigger yet. So the background on this is that the state of Wyoming has recently enacted a new statute that allows for decentralized autonomous organizations to become legal entities, LLC specifically. And I was honored to help a little bit on that statute. And one of the most remarkable aspects of it is that in forming that legal entity, organizers can, in the operating agreement, have to indicate the extent to which the entity shall be algorithmically managed. And that seemed really cool to everybody when it was going through the legislature. And then I started thinking, well, hold on a minute. The extent to which it shall be that one extent an entity could be algorithmically managed is 100%. It could be 100% algorithmically managed. And that was completely consistent with what some of the advocates of the legislation wanted. They wanted a completely autonomous organization that was a legal entity, that was an LLC. And that's enticing and interesting. However, it started making me wonder if this is really such a great idea, because are algorithms up to the task of managing a legal entity? And when you think of, and when it was discussed before the select committee that devised the legislation, the context was sort of smart contracts that were doing, basically like investment funds, like a classic DAO. Not an investment fund technically in the financial services sense, but you know what I mean. You pool your cryptocurrency, you invest it in projects, hopefully you make a profit. However, an LLC in Wyoming and in any state could do business in any way. It doesn't have to be like on a blockchain, and in fact, it doesn't have to be that form of an organization. It could run a kindergarten or a dynamite factory or whatever, a hardware store. It could do just anything. And so that got me thinking, well, what's the nature of my misgivings about 100% algorithm? And it really, so what I did on the legal side of legal hacking was I just started searching through the rest of Wyoming statutes to see what are the requirements for managers of LLCs in Wyoming. Turns out they were similar to Massachusetts LLCs in much of the U.S. One of the requirements is that, okay, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be just scrolling through a blog post. I'll just tell you, is that they have fiduciary duties of care and loyalty to the other members of the LLC and to the entity itself. And I thought, oh, good. Now, this is something I can get my mind around, where it's something I associate really with what I would call human-level intelligence, human-level cognition and judgment. And one of the big things in AI, which is, I'd say, very closely adjacent to using autonomous technologies on blockchain for organizations, is this quest we've had for decades now for general level intelligence. And it occurred to me this is an interesting way to describe some of the gap between what we can get now with even very like complex smart contracts and complex modern AI, like large language models, for example, and what we would expect from a human. So I started thinking, you know, maybe what we ought to do is shine some further light on this. Partly some of the legislators are asking me, well, why not just give this a try? We're a pro-innovation state. Why not let people experiment with completely algorithmically run legal entities? And so what I'm planning to say during the next hearings, which are in just under a month now, when they're looking at amending the statute further, is maybe what is to ask the question, how could we test? How could we assess and evaluate and measure the extent to which such an algorithm could correctly comprehend and apply the relevant fiduciary duties? It occurred to me one way I know how to test it is with a standardized test. In the legal context, it's the MPRE specifically. And if you're a financial advisor and a fiduciary rule applies, there's standardized tests for the same duties. There are standardized, well-calibrated, like longitudinally tested exam instruments. And so I thought, okay, well, let me get ahead of this a little bit. And I talked to some friends at OpenAI. They run GPT-3 and DALL-E and some other things in order to get a research API access to GPT-3, which is a natural language model. And it's possible, I'm still figuring out how, which is partly why I wanted to expose this to everyone, see if anyone had ideas, Jack or others. But I think I can create a test harness and basically apply just the duty of loyalty and care question set through the API and see if it can. Well, this is where it gets complicated. You can't do a multiple choice test in the API. There's no such like get or post for that. But I think I could arrange it in such a way to see if it could auto-complete the right way, or if it can basically get the difference, if it can start to distinguish answers that would demonstrate that it is selecting the scenarios and facts that would reflect, for example, a manager that is not putting their own interests or someone else's interests ahead of the interests of the members or the entity itself. And so I've been slowly. And the other thing I noticed when I was researching this is there's actually a bunch of people, or there's a number of people that have started to apply IQ tests to AI. And I thought, I got some good ideas for how they created test harnesses to apply different types of IQ tests to different models. And so I think it might be possible to cobble together a way, in summary, to apply a test to AI specifically to see whether or the extent to which it is capable of demonstrating answers that would be considered passing grades, shall we say, for something like the MPRE, or at least that subset of it. I think my assumption is that when I do this, what we'll see is it doesn't pass the grade, and that's okay, because I think some of the idea here is to ask the question, where's the gap? What is to be engineered next? What would be minimally sufficient to rely more and more on this beneficial technology for business and financial purposes? And it's something that we can build toward. Anyhow, so that's the hack, and I talked to my colleagues at MIT, where I also have a post about exploring this there. They thought it was a great idea, and so over this fall and spring semester of this academic year, I'm going to do some kind of research project that will be an open legal hacking project in collaboration with our friends in Boston Legal Hackers, in San Francisco Legal Hackers, to explore this. And that means you, my dear fellow legal hackers, are all invited to this jolly romp. And if you have any ideas, I hope you will contact me. I hope that you'll talk to me at lunch and see if we can find a way that's legit and where we can really learn something from trying this interesting test. Thank you very much. I ran the clock. You are allowed
How do
to
we
ask me
participate?
questions
How do we
later.
participate in January? Can we do it remotely? And what tools are you using to allow us to do that?
I hereby promise that there will be some kind of way that you can participate remotely. And so how that's going to happen exactly, I don't know, but it'll ultimately be available at law.mit.edu. And until we figure out how that's going to work, if you go to civics.com to this blog post, I know I can at least update this blog post with a link to how you can participate. The best way to participate is just like grab me. I'm at that table right there, and I'll be at lunch and I'll be at dinner, and let's just talk about it, and you can participate. Please participate.
Daza, I think that Codex was going to have some sort of like Codex prize for AI that could pass the bar exam, so there may be something in there to think about. Okay, so just I would type in what you need there, and then you can share. You just have to share it on the Zoom.
I think, and I'm not sure which is the, yeah, on LinkedIn, but
Or do you want me to just type it in real quickly?
yeah,
Okay, cool. I can type quickly.
you can say.
Yeah. Now I have to show that I can. Switching. Patagonia. How transition.
Wow, that's big.
From Oscar. Let's see.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. Okay, cool. And I'll just share the screen. Oh shit. All right, we all good? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So I just wanted to share some thoughts on an article that I had just. I had to say who are. Yeah, I thought you already. I'm Oscar Montezuma from. I used to be in the Legal Hackers Peru team, so I founded the chapter, but then I'm no longer in the organizing team, but I collaborate and help with them. So I recently wrote an article called "A Mix Between Google and Patagonia, or How to Transition from New Law to Good Law and Revolutionize the Legal Industry." And wanted to share some thoughts on this article because I strongly believed some 10 years ago when this new law concept appeared. There's an interesting book from George Beaton who talks about new law and new rules, and he does a research on where the term new law came from, and it goes up to Eric Chin, who is a lawyer from Singapore, and he has been talking a lot about new law and how this envisioned the future of law firms, no? and how we will see the next Google-styled law firm or something like that. And I've been a very close follower of this trend, of the new law trend, but I thought that there was still something missing that wasn't focused in the core of the industry, which is the people that make up law firms, no? And I tried this concept of good law as an evolution from the new law concept, no? So what I propose in this article are like six like foundational characteristics. It's open to build on that, so it's not like a closed idea. And the first one is to have that law firms should have a genuine and consistent purpose, and that's something that I really believe in, because I know very few examples of firms that have solid organizational culture. You can mention Twitter, you can mention Google, you can mention a lot of companies that have a strong purpose, Southwest Airlines, I mean many companies, but you can't find so many law firms that really have a purpose and that are known for their purpose and how they impact in society. They are known for their deals, for ranking high in the tier 1 chambers and partners and those rankings, but there's not much about this idea of impacting society beyond the profitability, and that's something that I really believe in, and I think that size, status, and power continues to be the way in which law firms grow, but a focus on people is still lacking. So I think that's something that's the first thing that I proposed. The second is to try and ground the purpose in this triple impact idea of sustainability. No? So if you see, there are many few examples also of law firms that have convert themselves into B Corps or benefit corporations. No? So the impact is that, okay, as long as I have and as I make jobs and I have people working for me, that's the way that I impact in society. No? But there's not a direct way in which law firms have been impacting, and I think that going to this idea of certifying themselves as B Corps or benefit corporations can be a strong way of doing it and of walking the talk. No? So that's the second characteristic that I found as part of this good law concept. No? Also to have a strong commitment with ethics and regulatory compliance, because we lawyers are the first ones to assess clients in compliance and ethics, but are we complying with that? Are we being consistent with that? Why, before most corruption scandals, we find lawyers there? In most Latin American law firms do not hire their lawyers as under the labor laws, because there's a belief that we are like liberal profession, that we are autonomous and we don't have to report to anyone. So that's kind of weird, really. So I think that we have to go beyond the conflict check and really have a strong commitment to ethics and compliance, and really we have a phrase in Spanish that's called, I don't know if in English it's the shoemaker's son always goes barefoot. No, I don't know if it's, yeah, okay. So trying to apply that. 4, balance and well-being in the team should be a top priority, and that's something that also lacks a lot in the law firm traditional model, because mental health is something that we don't talk about. There are many cases, and I recently read a book that I recommend from Eric Durant, a Canadian lawyer that wrote about her burnout process as a partner in a law firm in Canada. And a couple of weeks ago in Brazil, there was an intern that almost committed suicide from the 7th floor of the law firm. So, I mean, this is something that we don't talk, and we need to put in the top priority of the law firm structures if we want to build a new law firm of the 21st century, really, and change this, because it's something that really it's really burning out people and making a lot of talent go away from law, and that's something that we don't want. No. The 5th point is equity, parity, and inclusion at the core of the firm. That's something that our profession is still very sexist. In Latin America, it's even worse. There's a lot of impact washing and pink washing, and I think that has to change. And we have to also walk the talk and not only go and paint rainbows every June, but just walk the talk. I mean, just by looking at the firm and watching the structure, you can tell that there's a strong commitment and a real commitment to this diversity and inclusion idea. And the sixth one, the last one that I propose, is to adopt this concept of corporate citizenship or business activism. No, I think that a good example of this is not being idealistic, but a good example of this was the invasion of Russia and Ukraine recently. This war made many law firms to raise their voices and make strong statements against it. Some of them even stopped their operations in Russia, and this is something that we have to think a lot about in the law firms, because we have to be also very close to what our reality, the things that are happening socially, in terms of environment, in terms of political situations, and not just keep shy and cautious and look over our pockets, but also raise our voices. I think that the new generation of in the society demands that law firms also have a strong role in raising their voices in the reality, in the social and economic reality of the world. And I think that lawyers have a lot of things to contribute in changing the world. So those were like the 6 points that I included in this article. I'm open to any feedback, so we can keep talking during the day. And thank you so much for listening.
Hi. Thank you for your inspirational chat. It's about when you talk about mental health. I was hearing about this topic all the time in all the films, but the reality is that when you have your, for example, your review, this is not real. It's not easy for me, but I'm going to explain in my case one thing that I'm going to share with you, and I think, but it's not for my film. I think that is the person who worked with me, but I think it's the good way to help or to work with the people. I have a panic attack the last year, and I can be here in the first way because I can fly. I can go to my office because I work in a 43 floor, and I can go by in the elevator. And I talk with my boss, and I say, okay, I want to work, but I have this problem with the closed spaces and with the high. He say, don't worry, you can go, don't be pressure about all of this. And since July, I have my evaluation, and he put me excellent. And it's very strange because it's a very high evaluation, and I ask, okay, but you don't remember that I have to work in my home? And he say, okay, but you are excellent in your work. For me, it's not easy to serve because it's like you have a weakness, but now I'm talking about this with a lot of people, because if you say that you have a weak, the people is, okay, you don't serve for your job. And for example, now in the elevator, I talk with the people and I say, okay, I have a panic attack in a plane, and for this is my first flight come here, and I was very happy. And for this, I love that you talk about mental health. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, thank you. No, thank you. I think that's I mean, vulnerability is something brave, and it's something courageous, and I think that we should welcome that in the legal world as well. And that's something that under this Suits model, because I call it Suits, recalling the Netflix series, I think that we should build the anti-Suits model. And I think that being a mix between Google and Patagonia, mixing like technology processes, but also the human side, it's going to make things work much better. Thank you.
Thank you. It's only for finish. I used to say that innovation and transformation and the best legal tech is not any software. Software is our head and our heart.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. Oh, I just stopped sharing. Yeah, 9 minutes. Yeah, 9 minutes total. If you want us to have time for questions.
Hello everyone. I'm going to try and avoid being a talking head. People of my size are terrified at podiums, but here we are. Thank you, Jameson, for having me here today. This was really great. It's such a pleasure to be in the company of so many amazing people, and it's great to be back in Brooklyn. I got married at City Hall a few weeks ago, so it's nice being back. Hi everyone, I'm Shalini Iyengar. I am a PhD student at Yale at the Department of Anthropology, and in a prior life I practiced and taught environmental law. And then I decided to become less employable, so here we are. I'm going to quickly sort of go over my own sort of change in thinking about legal design and tech, and how hacking can really play a role when it comes to social impact. And I want to start by sharing a couple of vignettes. Way back in the day when I was teaching, I taught a course on law and design, and we tried and designed, the class was entirely of designers and planners who were undergraduates at the time. And it's an interesting space to be in, because my my colleague and I were both lawyers, and we were trying to actually see what happens when you run a class like that without any lawyers among the students. So we tried and designed a course that had several subtopics that the students were working on, and that included hospital care. It included online ADR. It included environmental law, and it also included things like data privacy. And 3 of the 5 projects touched upon legal tech in some way or the other. They were building games, they were prototyping apps, they were trying to teach people about what data privacy meant, so they were using animations to do that. And that course was really satisfying at multiple levels, but it also left me in some senses with a bit of, I felt like something was missing and I couldn't really articulate it. It felt like we did a lot with talking about themes of awareness, of trying to get people thinking about what was the law, kind of design as a service, law as something that needed to be navigated, which is of course hugely helpful and needed. But it just felt a bit anemic at the end of the day, and I wasn't really sure what to do with that. So flash forward to the summer, and I went off to India for fieldwork. And I was working at this really small NGO in Calcutta, my hometown. The NGO works with fisher communities and looks at the ways in which rights and entitlements can be claimed by these communities. And what startled me was how technology saturated that landscape is. One of the things that this NGO was doing was trying to figure out where boundaries of different villages were. Because on the basis of those boundaries, of course, what you can claim as a right or entitlement sort of comes to be. Because if you are on this side of the boundary versus the other, administrative regimes are different. You might have a national park. It might be tiger territory versus your own territory. And these are very contested and densely populated landscapes. And so I was talking with the NGO, and they mentioned that they had done something which I thought was really cool. They had gone and run a workshop in a village in one of these areas and sort of taught the local villagers how to map. And they'd taken these mapping GPS tools, pretty decentralized, taught them to map the boundaries of their own village, kind of run a test to see how they would do it. And then people there were mapping by themselves. And those maps were later being used to make claims in front of the local bureaucrats in the courts as authoritative sort of documentation. And that sort of moment struck me that this is sort of what I had been missing in the first piece, the first time that I had really been thinking about this. And that is that participation in the idea of law, right, is something way broader than just awareness. Awareness is hugely important, but I think when this is maybe coming out of a legal training, when you're thinking, about participation, often you're thinking about, let's teach people, let's make them aware of their rights, or we'll go into a space and say, can we do better consultations? There's legislation happening. But I also realized that law is not just that the form of legislations and things like that, but the lifeblood of the law is when these abstract general principles meet the messy realities of life. And to sort that out, law makes some ways of knowing authoritative. And that's slightly esoteric, so what does that mean, right? So law in courtrooms, right? Certain types of documentation, certain types of authoritative proofs. And it struck me that I had basically slept through all my evidence classes in law school, and here we are. I owe apologies to my professors. But that is precisely where we were at. Things like maps, right? Things like records of rights. These were documentations that were hugely important in guiding people's abilities to live their own lives, to claim rights and entitlements, and that these could and should be produced in consultation with local communities. So that led me to think, okay, so what can and should legal tech and design be thinking of, right? We could be thinking about how not just do we co-create these tools with communities, but how do we also then decenter ourselves from the process, give these tools to communities, but then also maintain a conversation by which you are then filtering those back into the courtrooms. Because there is a reality to living in these spaces. Folks can't really, I think when we think about making claims and entitlements and courtrooms, we forget the kind of privilege and cost that it takes to even fight a case. A daily wage worker isn't going to be able to come to court and hang around for 3 days because that's 3 days of wages gone, right? But what they can and could be doing is producing these ways of knowing what is going on in their lives that are then these forms of evidence that are produced before courts. So in a sense, and it's not just courts, right? I think what was startling for me was the evidentiary value of these documents even for government authorities, right? So government bureaucrats are strangely deferential to paper, and this possibly has the legacy of a colonial history to it, right? But that's very much the reality in these settings. So the question is, again, how do we help people create the ways that the law knows, right? And that's not consultation, that's a long-term sustained engagement. And I guess the final thing is just thinking about, when we think about legal tech, what do we do with the word law in there, right? Is it just sort of this medium that has to be navigated and parsed? Or is there a process by which we can think about how do we remake the law itself? Because if you change the way that the law knows, you sort of change the law itself. And I'll rest my spiel for there. Thank you very much for the time. I think I have very enthusiastically undercut my time, so please, I would love to hear questions.
So it's not so much a question, but a comment. Super brief pretext. I used to organize, so my first part of my career was social justice for a very long time. And I organized undocumented workers for like 10 years, and that was, so I started off actually in agriculture, and I did that in New York State for a long time. And I think an important point just to think about is not just about giving them access, exactly what you said, but I think truly kind of based on the principles of collective bargaining is the key here is to give them tools that they can use themselves and teach other people like themselves that they're self-sustaining, I think, part of it. So I'm just curious if that's also part of the discussion for this, because it's not just about education, it's about not just introducing this tool to that community, but teaching that community how to become an expert at it and be able to modify it and then distribute it themselves and then sustain it themselves. And I think that's really the key, so I'm just curious about that.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that's an excellent point. And what really impressed me about this mapping thing is that this was a low-cost, free kind of GPS mapping tool. They taught folks how to use it, and then it's with them. So they maintain a connection with the community insofar as these maps keep getting created, updated, and sent back. But ultimately, these 3 people in the village who learned that were teaching others in the next village, right? And because, given the sort of resources that a lot of social sort of, NGOs work with, it's, the ideas that we often have about running a lot of these programs, you're absolutely right, they have to be decentralized and they have to be left in the hands of the community to use as they see fit. Because, there are all sorts of other issues that also emerge, right? And I think that is what makes it sustainable. So I think if you're thinking about what sorts of tools to create, there has to be a usability and operability and a transmission element in that, rather than just, we built something, but we're the only ones who really kind of know how it works. That barrier, I think, is something that needs to be really worked on. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Jack, I don't have your thing, but you do have a website, so you can go there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Cushman. I'm the director of the Harvard Library Innovation Lab. Jameson encouraged us to include a big idea in these talks. So the big idea I wanted to bring to you is Legal Hackers. Its mission is to work at the most pressing issues at the intersection of law and technology. And I want to bring you this idea that the most pressing issue at that intersection is that we don't know how to have a civilization anymore. Like Larry Lessig sort of famously said that what's at the intersection of law and technology is us. We're this sort of pitiful dot at the middle of regulation by law, by tech, by markets, by norms, and the internet has disrupted all of those, has made all of those start to regulate us in much faster, less predictable ways, so that we're exploring what it means to be a civilization, what our options are, much faster than we ever did before, and we don't know if it works yet. We don't know if we can have a civilization in the presence of the internet yet. What it means to have a job is changing extremely fast right now. What it means to form a consensus truth is changing incredibly fast right now. What it means to choose a government is changing incredibly fast right now, and we don't know if it works yet. What I want to bring to you beyond that moment of panic is to say, hey, I work at a library, I work at a law library, and I want all of you legal hackers, all of us legal hackers who are reinventing how the world works, that's what legal hacking is, to steal more from libraries, steal more ideas from libraries. Ideas like libraries are places that help us remember who we are, and they help us remember generationally. They help us remember at a scale of decades and centuries who we are and where we came from and where we're going. Let's steal that idea. Libraries are the place of last resort, especially public libraries, are the place of last resort that you go when you just don't know what to do next. Whether you're in a domestic violence situation, or you don't know how to file your taxes, or you don't know what to read next, libraries are places with a person with an ethical commitment to help you out as best they can. It's an extraordinary resource. Let's borrow that idea. Libraries are an essential part of the speech network that we maintain as societies. Even a tiny town will pay to have a public library because the public library is a core part of how we form consensus truth. We need to pay attention to those networks. Libraries are little anti-capitalist experiments. Like you have like your economy working the way it does, and then within the walls of the library, they're like, it all works differently in here. Let's try this for a while. Whatever economy you're in, the library is a chance to try something else, to experiment and learn. It helps you stabilize that change that happens in your society by experimenting. And libraries are places that think about citizens and not consumers. Libraries, I mean, they call you patrons. What we mean is like sort of citizens of your community. Certainly not according to the government, citizens on a list, but like people who are part of this community that we're trying to build, people who are part of our civic infrastructure. That's how your library sees you. They don't see you as a user. They don't see you as a consumer. We need to borrow that idea. If we are to answer this pressing question of like, can we have a civilization together anymore now that we can all talk to each other all the time and don't know what to say? If we are to answer that, this is, I think, one of the core tools that we can use to do it. And since I'm here from a library, I wanted to pass that along. There's a lot of really interesting things there, and let's mine that while we can. That was only 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So let me tell you very quickly a few of the things that I would love to talk with you about that we're working on at the Harvard Library Innovation Lab. There's only 10 of us, and it's a small part of the saving the civilization problem. We're thinking about how do we collaboratively update the legal curriculum. Things like how we teach criminal law have to start moving faster and including more people. Tools like our open casebook platform can help professors collaboratively decide what to teach. Not just ours, but that problem we have to all work on. We're thinking about how do we make core legal data open and computable. Things like our Case Law Access project, which scanned a bunch of legal cases in the United States, and what happens when we do, and who gets exposed, and is that good or bad or both, and what do we do about it all? I'd love to talk about that with you. We're thinking about how do we preserve data for the next 50 years? The internet is only 50 years old, and we don't know if we can remember things from generation to generation yet. Websites break within months of posting them, is my experience of making websites. We need to make websites that last for decades. We need to make data that lasts for centuries, figure out how to do that together. We're thinking about how to get more people included in that cultural record. the question of whether you are remembered, whether you are part of that generational memory that libraries offer, has often depended how sort of legally precarious you are. Things like the sex worker movement that responded to the Sesta Fosta debate is now largely forgotten already because the platforms it happened on were removed by the law that it was about. That being remembered in the record depends a lot on who you are and how you're remembered, and the law has a lot to say about that, and technology does too. So we're thinking about those sort of precarious archives that are legally in danger. And I'd love to talk about that. And we're thinking about how do we help internet communities grow into civic communities? What is this this feeling of in saving the world, that as we move from kind of my people are on Main Street, my civic life is on Main Street, my kind of civic sustenance is on Main Street, to well, my people are in a Slack group or a group of people I talk to on Twitter, but maybe they don't want to talk to each other. What is that sense of kind of a hollowness that comes from what we've left behind and haven't figured out how to bring along yet? I get to think about that from the library perspective because libraries are one of those core resources in a small town. I think they might be a core resource in our new civic life and those Slack groups and the other ways that we kind of build a civic society, but certainly not the only one. What else does it take to build a government out of a pile of online communities, to build a people, a population, a civilization out of online communities? It's something I'd love to talk with you all about. And finally, since we're coming from a bunch of law schools, sort of how do we involve students in that conversation as a group at a library? If we hold a colloquium, a class, a conversation, beyond the design thinking stuff, which I think is really important, but it's just kind of tools, like what conversation are we trying to have with students about this saving the world, going out and doing more than working at the law firm thing that a lot of students are now already thinking about? So that's what's on my mind. Thank you so much. Very quickly. Out of here.
What can we do? I want to collaborate, but I'm from Mexico, not from the States. What can I do?
So we are the Library Innovation Lab, and our website will talk about some of our projects. We have sort of a jobs page that includes RAs and fellows and other kind of big picture stuff. We have a big grant that we're just bringing on and digesting, so this is a good time to have sort of big picture, what should we be working on kind of conversations. So I'd love if you just find me on there and reach out by email is a great place to start. I realize I brought really big picture questions here and not kind of here's a project on the ground, but I hope we'll get a chance to talk about those too.
Terrific for legal hacking purposes. A lot of us in various chapters have used your case law access project. Has that grown? I haven't used it since pre-pandemic. Is that still in the works and evolving?
Absolutely. So if you go to case.law, that's our collection of all of the precedential law from the United States up through 2018. It's evolving in the sense that thanks to Fastcase. Fastcase has started donating on a rolling basis more recent law. So we're able to update to some extent the law that we have there. But it's also it's an API. It's just big files you can download. So it's evolving in the sense that the research community outside of us is downloading it and using it for publishing and understanding the law.
Hi there. Apologies for missing this, but you were making a point early on. You were cruising quite quickly, and I'm trying to keep up. But you were talking about libraries don't see individuals coming in for services as users or consumers, but as something else. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Because that is an interesting point that I don't want to miss.
Sure. So I mean, certainly the term of art, librarians talk about patrons, which a patron is someone who patronizes you. They support your work, but I think what they really mean is libraries are there to serve people and help them in being what they're meant to be in the community. And that means that we make different decisions, like really practically. Like if you talk to librarians about metrics, we need to understand the impact of the websites that we're making. They're like, whoa, we don't do metrics. We don't measure people. That's not the relationship that we have with people. It's disrespectful. So from the start of starting to make websites at the Library Innovation Lab, like we weren't able to use things like Google Fonts because we get people saying like, hang on, like you can't be taking the work that we're doing and share it with Google. That's not the relationship that you have with us as users of your tool. You're not a startup, you're a library. I think that plays through in a lot of kind of instinctual or habitual or practical ways that librarians engage with the people who come into the building, that they're not seeing them as a resource to exploit. They're seeing them fundamentally as a the people whose well-being you are trying to expand. It's such a different way of framing the interaction that you have.
Thank you, Jack. Next up, we have Miguel Willis on behalf of Philadelphia.
How's everyone doing today?
You want to go there, and then you just go on to Zoom and you can share the screen.
No, I spelled it wrong on that thing. Yeah, it's not up here. Hopefully this works. Oh, perfect. Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. Happy anniversary, 10th anniversary. My name is Miguel Willis. I am the Executive Director and founder of the Access to Justice Tech Fellows Program, adjunct professor at Penn Law, and also innovator in residence at the Future of the Profession Initiative, mouthful. Simply put, I am the man of many titles. Today, I'm representing on behalf of the Philadelphia chapter of Legal Hackers. I'm really excited to share about our upcoming social justice hackathon. I know all of you in this room are probably familiar with the hackathon model from the Global Legal Hackathon, which I've been honored to participate in multiple years. When I was a law student 5 years ago, I was a TUA. I organized the inaugural Social Justice Hackathon. What we wanted to do was really empower communities, legal aid organizations to identify and address problems and gather technologists, legal hackers, students, community members to develop solutions to address those problems. 5 years later, we're bringing a hackathon to Philly, and it's quite fitting. Philadelphia is fifth largest city in America. It's the largest, or it's the poorest major city in America, with over 30% of the population of residents living in poverty. Each year, over 20,000 evictions are filed in Philadelphia. Over 92% of those tenants have no representation. But it's also the birthplace of innovation, right? Ben Franklin founded this country. He was an innovator. He created things. So to have and host and be a part of the organizing team of the Social Justice Hackathon is really important. Some of the things that we want to do a little different or think just a little, with a little more care and intentionality. Sustainability. Sometimes you all know that hackathons, you know, we can get a lot of synergy over a weekend to develop a project, and those projects kind of fizzle out. We want to empower these community organizations in Philly, like Community Legal Services, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, to drive the problems and create that plan of sustainability beforehand. So really thinking about that in an intentional manner. Another thing that we want to do is really empower and uplift the voices of the most marginalized community members. Those are individuals who are experiencing the issues that we're trying to solve for, and empower them as lived experience experts. My organizer just walked in, so she'll probably be up here and join me. Also, we don't want to oversell this hackathon. I've seen it all too common where the coders and the technologists and lawyers come in the room and save the day. We want to level set expectations. We want to, you know, have that conversation after the hackathon ends and not just go back to, you know, our respective projects. So the hackathon is going to be on October 28th through 30th. In the true ethos of civic hacking, our organizing team includes all of the law schools in Philadelphia. Legal Hackers chapter, Our Ladies Community Legal Services. So what the ask is from you all, give us data, give us ideas, participate. Sponsor, if there's any sponsors in the room. We want to really think of how we can use a hackathon model for systemic change. So focusing on social justice issues, we hope to create just a small bit of support so that we can really live up to the ethos of civic hacking, legal hacking. So thank you all for giving me time, and I would love to answer questions. Still have time?
How about now? Great. This is awesome. Are you in contact with the Code for America Brigade in Philadelphia?
Yes.
Okay, good, because they are terrific at doing civic hackathons.
I failed to mention Code for Philly, but yes, they are on our organizing team and very much leading the effort.
Beautiful.
Hi, this is super nice. My question is also about, you know, what kind of stakeholders that you are working with, including from the public sector, because I can imagine for sustainability and longer conversation purposes, I don't know how the buy-in is.
I think having those conversations early, right, and really thinking about those ancillary stakeholders, whether it's grassroots organizations that aren't usually commonly in the room, people on the front ground, municipality, you know, policy experts. So really, I think the event will catalyze that synergy, which, you know, for any of you who've been in an in-person hackathon, it naturally does. But how can we have these continued conversations? So Code for Philly, they actually have a model where they invite organizations to propose a problem and work with them over time. We're going to try to incorporate that within the hackathon and also get law students involved, of course. And not just law students, but CS students, engineering students. So we have a great opportunity through the collaboration of four or five law schools. Yes.
Actually, much more, because everybody here will probably connect us to the rest of them.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, did you intentionally spell hackathon wrong? Because it's
Yeah.
tough to find. That was intentional?
So this site isn't live yet. The site will go live next week. We'll be happy to share that. So when it does go live, register, participate, and yeah.
Just to clarify, we are actually reaching out to all the different nonprofits in Philly. Community Legal Services of Philadelphia is helping with that outreach. Is that better?
Yep.
Cool. So we are reaching out to nonprofits in Philly. Community Legal Services of Philadelphia is kind of spearheading that process by identifying potential partners we can speak to. And so our spiel is, we would like to come together to help you solve your problems, share your problems with us, and they will either get turned into challenges for the hackathon, or they'll be converted to long-term projects that we all want to work on together. Because all the organizers who've come together, they all have the same shared spirit. We want to make a difference, and on our own it's limited, although you've made amazing difference. But everybody kind of had the same feeling that, we're limited if we're working on our own, but when we all come together, like he said, it should catalyze us into something much bigger and longer term.
Actually, that is helpful because that was kind of blended into my next question. Is, do you think the issue with sustainability is due to a lack of ownership towards the end, or do you think it's a lack of resources, or maybe both or neither? Just because, moving forward, is it because there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, but no one knows who owns it because it's where they're to solve a problem, it's decentralized, or do you think it's because people know what to do, they just don't have access to funds, or they don't have access to the resources once, or both, I guess, towards the end?
Yes to all.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yes to all. I think not having a plan that accounts for all of those usually kind of accelerates that. But we're going to try. We're going to attempt, but we're not promising that we're going to achieve, right? So yeah, we're definitely stay along for the journey and excited to engage with you all through the rest of this.
Thank you very much. We have our final lightning talk speaker. Thank you all. Lunch is back there, so it's going to be lunch right afterward. Tom Bregelman, all the way from Berlin. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Jameson, for having me. Thank you, everybody, for being with me here. I come from Berlin, the German chapter of the Legal Hackers, and I will ask you for help because we're in dire straits. Germany, a recent report says, is 15 years behind in digital justice, right? And we're trying to catch up. We just abolished the fax in our legal system, in the court system, and replaced it with the digital fax, kind of, that we all hate, just to lighten things up. When I see here's the Kings County Supreme Court, I'm also a lawyer admitted to the bar in New York. 10 years ago, I lived in New York. I appeared in a traffic matter here in the Kings County Supreme Court. On the next day, I had the transcript of the whole proceedings via email to check whether there were any errors. And then I sent it back, said it's fine. And then we got the official transcript. In Germany, everybody says we're unable to do full transcripts of court proceedings. People say it's not possible. And I say, I seen it 10 years ago. So greetings from the digital Stone Age in Germany, right? Every time I come to the US, I travel to the future, which is actually the present. But let's not despair. Happy times will come. We will be better. And the Berlin chapter has had a hard time in the pandemic as well. We were very active before, Jameson, as you know, also together with the Munich chapter. And then the pandemic didn't break our spirit, but it wasn't fun. And we'll try to reactivate now from October on, focusing on this 15-year lag in digital justice. And also focusing on, even if you try to catch up, you can do it in the wrong way. And that's one thing we're going to focus on. How can we improve the German legal system with digital tools to make it more efficient? And I will ask you all for help, right? Please help us too. And what we're also focusing on is the German government has done a couple of reports on poverty. and on how people are excluded. And they found out that in Germany, for instance, they expect that 20% of the population will, for a long time, or maybe forever, not be able to use digital tools. And they're not talking about kids, or elderly people, people who are disabled. And what happens, I mean, in Germany, the legal system isn't as digital, so it's not yet a problem. But if we improve, we cannot, by our new digital structures, exclude 1/5 of the population. That's not possible. And I know very well, I know enough adults who wouldn't be able to handle a website that allows them to file their taxes. And if you tell them, well, then use the chatbot, they just, it's not possible. What do you do about this? So when I think about legal hackers, I'm not thinking just about having digital hacks. I'm also, you can have life hacks. So if we have a digital legal system, which we need, be more efficient, we will have more data, might have tools that help judges to have better decisions, better legal literature. How do we hack this again so that that part of the population in a country, in a jurisdiction, or worldwide that will not be able to use this can participate, right? I mean, you can probably not have in every little city then still an office where you can come in. I don't know if that's workable. Maybe you will have mobile teams that come in and say, we're here to help. I'm sorry, I'm not channeling Reagan here. Like, let's say we're from the government here to help. I think the government can help. If, as far as you have governmental service, they need to be accessible. So people will still need to be able to make their claim in person, orally, right? And fairly. And that's what we also want to focus on. That's two things. When I said I come from the digital Stone Age, I mean unfortunately the governmental sector. Berlin as a city has a big vibrant blockchain scene, for instance. We have many companies that are working in the metaverse. So we're also going to focus on a little bit on this because Berlin has many people active in this. Before the pandemic, we had the official blockchain embassy in Berlin. It folded during the pandemic because nobody was going there anymore. We'll try to revive this as well. And somebody mentioned decentralized autonomous organizations today, right? Daza, it was you, right? Right. We're also going to focus on this, and I'd like to talk with you about this later. This can be an interesting thing. I mean, the world famous The DAO in 2016 was started from Berlin, actually. I remember this. And I remember the day when they were all getting a bit nervous when the DAO was hacked. And before they always said, it's unstoppable, code is law. And I said, well, if the hacker is stealing so much funds from your DAO, I think that must be legal because the code allows it. And then they said, that's not how we meant it. And then I said, welcome to the world of lawyers. You programmed something, you intended it differently. I'm here to help. That's in a way my spiel here today, what we're going to focus on. Do I have another minute? Or I think that about wraps it up. I'd like to chat with all of you. We need ideas in Germany how to improve our legal system, and I'm trying to overcome these mental barriers we have where people say it can't be done, it's impossible. Transcript of oral proceedings? No way, right? It's just, I know it works, right? So, but sometimes the Germans still tend to be arrogant and thinking they have the best legal system and the best legal education in the world. Maybe. Well, let's see. We are here all to help each other, and I'm looking forward to the whole conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right.
I have one question. You said, so I feel like we're 50 years behind. Who says that Germany's 50 years behind?
We have an official study. I think it was also sponsored by the German government and also by an advisory company. You could, of course, question this. I think it was BCCG. So, and maybe it's... the question is always, how objective is this? Can you measure 15 years? I think they compared Germany to Singapore, for instance. And then, of course, you could say, what do you mean 15 years behind? I mean, how democratic or how advanced or how inclusive is every system? So that's, of course, also a polemical thing to say 15 years behind. But something, I worked in New York City for 3.5 years as an attorney, right? I'm admitted here. I used Pacer, and Pacer is also in a way Stone Age HTML, maybe still, right? But we don't have this in Germany, right? We don't have an online filing system where we have the case file online, right? In bankruptcy, the famous Celsius bankruptcy, for instance, this big blockchain company, went bankrupt. The court docket is online, live. I file something, it's up there. We don't have this. So if you say you're 15 years behind, then we're of course 65 years behind in that regard. All right? So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so here's what's next. Who's met the people at their table? Just raise your hand. If you've met the people at your table, raise your hand, please. Okay, cool. If you have met the people at your table, please sit at a different table for lunch. If you haven't, you can of course stay where you are, but let's switch it up. My hope is that everyone meets everyone in the room. I think it's relatively easy. Lunch is back there. Feel free to enjoy yourselves. Jonathan's going to give his keynote in 45 minutes, and so enjoy yourselves. Have great conversations, and thank you all very much.
Yeah, Berlin. You're like 50 years ahead of us in every other way.
Of course, it's not a cracking country.
Screensavers to put up for the live stream.
Yes, please. Okay, that's okay by me. Oh, yeah. I'm okay, thank you. And I don't really know what's actually being said, so I'm limited to who knows what quality of weird translations into English, which is a hard subject to try to explain anything into Chinese. So, but from the little I've read, tried to understand the people that are a little more authoritative, seems like pretty close to call this? Steak and noodles? There's no such thing in my my thing doesn't know what fried plank steak is. So how many calories do you think this is? Any guesses? 800? 1,000? I'm just trying to make a good faith guess. different ways that contracts review to pull information out or to help create a first draft, for example.
Yeah.
In contract automation.
Hero, for example.
And that's who I was thinking of. I said some, but like that.
Yeah.
And then there are some other folks doing some interesting things around the edges. With contract assembly and integration into other like document management systems. But yeah, that is really if-then logic, and it's more automating in a very like defined processes.
Right. And what I'm wondering is how much there's
robot process automation.
Exactly. And I was wondering if that is probably like because I'm working right now in a no-code technology. Our possibilities are great. Like we can automate great processes, but I think it's also limited because we don't have AI yet, right? And I think there will be RPA just enable to build that bridge. What do you think?
Do you work at a law firm or in-house counsel or something else? I don't think what context you're speaking in.
I work in a legal tech company startup called Joseph.
Middle name?
The name is Joseph.
Did you say Joseph? Joseph?
No, yeah.
Oh, that's not my name. Sounds the same.
But you have to remember it.
Yeah. Joseph, what country are you in?
I'm from Germany, but Joseph is originally from Australia.
Chile, okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were wondering if in the future might be a robot process automation?
What do you hear?
Well, so I can tell you what I think, but I have to ask one more question first. The reason I'm asking, by the way, just to be transparent, is the future is different for different like things.
Hey.
So
not that specific.
So
no, but you're right.
I'm kind of curious which track you're thinking in. So what are you? I guess you mean like the future as it's relevant to Joseph's products and services and success as a company?
No, I mean the future of the legal industry.
Okay, I'm glad I asked. So in that case, I would just my opinion, but is that the answer is just a pretty clean no. It's not the future in the sense that when I think
or RPA.
Well, RPA. I was speaking to RPA, but and it's because the legal profession is like surprise. Have you ever practiced law?
I studied.
Okay, pretty close. But so it is like as professions go, it's much more diverse than a lot of other professions. Maybe business consulting is one of the few that's even more diverse in terms of the types of work, the types of contexts, the types of skills, the types of goals, the kinds of measurements of success, how you compete, the types of reasoning and analysis that's needed. It's like just vastly different for someone that's like doing mortgages and financial services in a heavily regulated area versus someone that's trying to understand like a creative class action lawsuit or antitrust economic. Oh, thank you. Philosophy.
From the day of the dead, my hometown and the cheese factory. I have cheese for you, but they're in the fridge. So
yeah, keep them in the fridge.
Just before we leave, remind me to just give you some. Because I brought it all the way.
I think we're all waiting for cheese. We're all waiting for cheese.
Thank you. These are with albahaca, and they're gourmet cheeses, so they're like, I don't know how to say it, but they're like, they made it with black garlic and albahaca and different types. So I brought the albahaca one because that's general. Everyone
Maybe we should talk to Jameson about after the workshop, before dinner when we need a snack. Maybe that's the right time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll ask them then. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, we do. And it's the right time so everybody can enjoy it and recognize the effort that it took to create it and to bring it here for us. Otherwise it'll get lost. It'll just, I think it's very sweet of her. And the people that made it. Anyway, so when you look at it the way I just described it, I think it's going to take, it's basically almost unbounded. So the types of technologies that will be very important for the future are almost relevant. I think maybe not jet propulsion technology, or maybe not like a few others, but normal working technologies, workflow, all sorts of integration, all sorts of analytics. Yeah, and that's when you get into robot process automation partly, but a lot of workflow happens at the enterprise level. So you kind of think about what the deeper APIs are and the way, like the types of databases and places where data is stored, and how it integrates into a variety of different applications. Because that's getting close to robot process automation. Have you ever heard of the technology stack? STA, okay. Have you ever heard of the OSI 7-layer stack? Oh, so this is where it all started. In maybe the 80s, this international standard came up for the network stack. It was the only one in the beginning. And
is it like an overview of the stack that you need?
Yeah, that not just that you need, the stack that exists, that we all operate within some way when we do anything with computers on a network, on any network. And it basically sort of shows how you've got like hardware at the bottom, and it's sort of like these big pipes and huge things that go under the Atlantic Ocean and are all over the place under the street here. And then you've got these sort of like network operating centers. That's one level up. There's a lot of servers. And you have these sort of specific kinds of things that do like DNS and TCP/IP and stuff like that. Is a deep layer of the network protocol that's above that. And then above that you have things like HTTP, FTP, SMTP like email, HTTP web, like on and on and on. There's like 50 everyday common protocols that are above TCP/IP that are.
Is it?
Yeah, when I first saw, but it's not an ERP, actually
It's just an overview.
Yeah,
Okay,
of
so
the entire world.
that's
Crazy.
It's not actually only generally tech stack or what.
That we exist with. Yeah. And then there's 4 more that go all the way up to the interface, HTML, CSS, or whatever, or whatever. Like it could be something totally different. It could be Flash or whatever you say. YouTube is like a video program, and so it's and then there's various levels of application layers. And so when
I hear that.
The reason I mentioned
that
is
sounds
because,
awesome, actually.
There's several dimensions of technologies and practices, actions and communications that operate, several of them across any one of those stacks, and then some of them will change different layers of the stack. Robot process automation is a very limited thing in one little layer. And so it's like there's a lot that's going to be important that could flow innovation, profit margins, better results open all over the place.
And that's why it gets confusing because I feel like in the legal tech world, it's not even legal, right? It's just tech that legal can also use, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, there's two types.
Nice.
Technologies like nuclear technology or
LXD is
or document automation generally, or document review.
LXD has become this like
but I think we're
insane.
thinking a little bit too small, I guess. And so what I want to do, like,
oh really? Wow.
I would love to find that
based
like
in LA.
every other technology. I really need to get more into
that's
that,
amazing.
but I mean, I'm not from a technology background. So I'm literally searching for processes that make sense to all to be on, and kind of finding use cases for a product, basically. And I'm currently working in sales for a legal tech company, so we're also using a lot of technology. I mean, this can be combined. Also, I think that law firms will need way more sales tools in the future because they will build applications and then they want to offer it. But how do you offer it without knowing how to do business development? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But currently they don't really take that into account.
So I can offer you one very technical thing.
Sorry,
So, have you heard of, I'm imagining have you heard of something called Postman? Postman.
I mean, I know what a postman is.
Which is like a person with a bag of mail and says, here's your mail. That's the right word. And it's also the name of a company and an open source. It's an application, but it operates at several layers. And what it does is it's designed for developers that are making APIs, but they accidentally made it so simple to just test the API that now business people, lawyers, like non-technical people can actually just fill out a few things in a Postman screen, hit a button, and well, that's another thing you can do, but the main thing is you can use APIs. That's the very best thing to be able to do when you're thinking about creating APIs. You want to be able to use a bunch of them and actually see what happens, and then you really know what you're talking about. And also it's really handy. So when you use it and then you get back the results in the same screen, it looks like JSON usually, right? You can read it. You don't have to be a PhD in computer science to read JSON. And then you can sort of be like, oh, if I change this parameter a little bit, or if I did this kind of get something else, then I can kind of, it changes what the data interchange is a lot and what I'm getting. And then that is an excellent position from which to brainstorm potential products and services that can fill niches.
Understand the dimension.
And understand, and just understand this, and I swear to God, it is kind of complicated, but it's not complicated, and I just actually play with it. And then when I play with Postman to try to understand APIs and do things, and use them, and integrate them,
No, I went to law school.
I fail
A lot of things
about
are,
9 out of 10 times. I try something, it's like error this, error that, I get back some totally different thing, and I'm like, what the heck? No idea. And then I learn, and then I go and I Google for this API, and I usually, if I fail, thousands of other people have failed, and then some of those people have posted to Stack Overflow or to some forum somewhere, and then they're like, oh, I had the same problem, you have to change this parameter, or like do it like this, or oh, you're going through the wrong port on the upper left, like put port 85. Oh, right, oh, that's in the documentation somewhere. I didn't read it. And then you can learn, you can eventually learn how to do it. And then sometimes, I mean, I don't know, there's some APIs where I just never figured out what I was doing wrong. And then I'll ask people that are technical in my life, you know, can you help me with this? Like Jack Bushman is awesome, and there's a bunch of people that you probably know in your company who are engineers. In like half of a second, they're like, okay, that works, you know exactly what's going on. Then you can ask them politely without bothering them. What did you just do? And then you can learn. So that's what I offer you. Postman.
Postman, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It will expand your capabilities 1,000%.
Yes, okay, awesome.
Then you can play with the tech kids.
Yeah, nice.
And then you can compose your next business.
Yeah. And what I find super interesting as well is when, let's say, I can think of a technology that would make sense and that's not existent yet, then I'm like super keen to also make it so simple that you can sell it, because that's the other point, right? I notice it right now. I'm the one who needs to teach the lawyers, the in-house lawyers or law firms, I need to reach out to them and be like, yeah, this makes sense for you because, and it's not even that easy. I mean, now I kind of have my, tricks and tips and stuff, but when I was starting, it's not always that easy, and not everybody gets the point across what that technology can help you with. And I think if you have a product that covers even more than what another platform, for example, covers, it gets even more complicated to kind of, sell the whole potential of the platform or of the technology.
Well, the funny thing is,
and then it's a pity because then you don't sell it and then it might not be successful.
exactly, because you're losing the value.
Yeah.
I think a major part of being successful, so you said it's sort of like much bigger, but then and it's challenging. It takes like intellect and skill and luck to get it bigger, but then the 1% will figure out how to then make it smaller again to just the right thing, and to resist the temptation of loading and menus and opportunities and configurations to the point where no one can deal with it. So keeping it simple, streamlined as possible at the end, in a targeted way, so that any user, it never this way, but theoretically any end user could look at it and be like, oh, I know what this is. I know what to do. I know what it means. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, what you can do is kind of tailor your... Sorry.
So are you, I don't know if you're at all interested in philosophy.
I mean, I saw this chart.
Yes.
Studying philosophy makes you understand more in the beginning, and then it goes very low down. It's like, I don't understand life anymore. So I think the deeper you get into philosophy, the harder it is to kind of, I don't know, understand life.
I think so too. Although it may be similar to product and new venture launch in the way we were talking. After it's completely confusing, I think the ideal is that it then can be simplified with some insight that is so plain and obvious that you're like, this is the North Star. I think very few enlightened people achieve that, but I think that's the goal.
Like a purpose?
With the simple truth of it.
Sometimes I kind of think like, do I want to have this? Like, why?
Is that something?
Am I ever going to take that?
I've seen a few from afar. I've never experienced it.
My sister actually worked as
It is possible. So, because you bit last night Atman and said you were interested to talk more about it, and Atman is a concept in ancient Hindu, or even really in the Vedas before Hinduism, of kind of almost like what this is hard to say in English, but similar to like what is the soul, kind of, and what aspect of us is part of something that's almost like eternal and timeless, and really beautiful and good. So that's
Like the purpose?
yeah, similar, yeah, like the ultimate purpose.
Of
Sort
the
of like
technology or generally?
of this philosophy called the Vedas from India, and had this concept of what the soul of a person was. We were talking about it last night, and she wanted to continue talking a little bit about it.
Sure, yeah, go ahead, please.
So in that, but I just wanted you to know what
And then I'll
meant.
listen. I need to eat anyway.
Yeah. So I had a thought 2 weekends ago that you might find interesting along the same lines. I was trying to wonder, like,
why did you make this huge investment on my platform when they can actually have associate people? But it's one of those things where you have to say, so let's think from like more of an innovative standpoint. We kind of like what we were discussing earlier.
that there's some kind of advanced now. You can sort of do simulations of complex questions and then start to get different potential answers and probabilities. One way to do that is to put almost like a bracket around certain things like if the weather is within this range and if like the cars are going this fast and if the incline is like this, like what are the probable performance effects? So you sort of can put a bracket around all these things and they're all almost like probabilities and then there's ways to simulate them, for example. So I'm sort of oversimplifying, but it sort of occurred to me like, I wonder if
Just quickly go there.
Oh, but of course.
But yeah, let's just change maybe the data later.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to see how your journey goes with this startup idea. I encourage you to continue. I encourage you that maybe, like, if you also have some infinitely comprehensive and thoughtful debate, maybe what's happening here is we're like part of the imagination of this being, and maybe by living our life with almost like solving different brackets of what if X, Y, Z, and then instead of solving things, we sort of like approximations of different little problems, and so like when you have accelerates, like with rates feel like zero and others behind, and they come together in certain very improbable ways and a bunch of things. It's going to be almost like a solving little brackets as part of this huge question or inquiry that the mind is imagining. Well, I think I saw different books when I was inquiring what these could be, and I imagination, so it has its own identity as well. Hello. Yes, I'm Dasa.
I thought that was an interesting topic.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in it personally. I used to work in blockchain company.
Sorry?
I used to work in a blockchain financial research back in 2019.
Okay.
So I thought way back then, and I thought it was an interesting topic. Hi, I'm Kayla. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Yeah. So
Oh, there it is.
I thought his topic was very interesting. So I thought I should go say hi.
I'm glad that you did. Where do you live now?
I'm based in Baltimore, but I'm in Portland, so chapter.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so I move around.
Fantastic.
I'm not sure if Maryland has a legal hackers chapter. If not, I'm gonna.
It could. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, so I thought that I could connect with some of the interesting people who might be very related to the topic. It's very interesting.
I'm interested.
Do you know Caitlin Long?
Yes?
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought she immediately came to mind.
Yeah, so she was more involved than I was in the creation of this particular statute. And she was actually, she's not an elected legislator in Wyoming, but she was invited by she has some formal status where she doesn't vote, but she sits with the senators and the representatives, and it's like she's got a very senior status. And then I was part of a sort of invited expert council or something where we actually did the writing of the statute, and then we would provide it to legislative council who would make it formally appropriate in terms of Wyoming things. And then the committee, including Caitlin, would discuss it. Senator Rothfuss, Chris Rothfuss is the main actor, and then they would talk it through, change some things, and then it was enacted. So I'd say Caitlin was sort of a primer. She was a principal into the statute I was talking about today. Although interestingly, she didn't voice an opinion when I testified last time to have an amendment to make sure there was human. Basically, my sense on this is we should probably have human control over the legal entity. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, to me that just like seems obvious. It's not obvious to a lot of people. Caitlin never spoke during this entire thing, and so I still don't know what she actually thinks, and I'd be curious to know. And I didn't think to reach out to her because I felt like if she wanted to say something, she would.
Right.
But I'm just personally curious, like, what her thoughts are.
I'd be interested. I mean, like, if you didn't know her, I would probably set up some sort of
close with her. Actually, the way I got involved in Wyoming was thanks to her indirectly. I have a good friend named Tieme, who's a law student now. But before she was a law student, we were friends, and her then boyfriend lived in Jackson Hole, and so she was visiting with them a lot, and she was really into blockchain around the same 2018 era. And so she somehow go to the meetups, and she met Caitlin, and Caitlin got her involved in the initial digital assets, the first bunch of statutes that they ran. And then Tieme came back to Boston and said, Basil, you've got to meet this person named Caitlin. And then I sort of emailed her a little bit, and then ultimately through other people got involved in the select committee that was doing stuff that she was on. So like I think we've said hi once or twice by email, but we've never I don't even think we really talked.
She's hard to get on.
Yeah, she seems really busy.
We'll leave it at that.
And I really respect when she does talk. I'm just so impressed. She's so amazing.
She's been in this for so long. Her perspective is very. Back then, like nobody really knew what was going on.
Right.
And especially when Wyoming took the lead on this, I was like blown away. Like Wyoming.
I know, of all places. But it's well suited. Have you ever seen any of their legislative hearings?
Not yet. But
I encourage. I know it sounds weird to say, "Hey, check out this great entertainment," but it's like it's not entertainment, but they actually broadcast them live on YouTube. And if you wanted to say something, you could sign up to testify, or you could get on one of these councils, so people that really work on the bills. But a lot of times, even when I'm not testifying, I'll put it on the background because it's so good. Like just the level of discourse and the way that they struggle with the issues to come up with it. I feel like it's like textbook. So like Wyoming. I didn't know a thing about Wyoming before TNA told me to look at it. Just my friend. And now that I've seen it, like, I'm a believer. These people are good at this. Caitlin Long is partly to thank, but not exclusively. Like there's this person, Chris Rothfuss, I mentioned, and there's like 3 or 4 of these legislators who are like, they're fully turned on, open, but also like they're awkward and correctly. I don't know how to say it. Like, they understand. They're trying to do the right thing. They're adapting, and then they're succeeding. They're actually getting laws passed. This is rare.
Very. I mean, yeah, so overall, I thought the topic was amazing. Like, I'm personally now interested in Ethereum Foundation. I do have a good friend of mine who are like operating manager of the foundation. I don't know like the titles are. There's Stephen Nunn, who's also a part of Kodak's standard. And I also thought he would be a good connection because he's running the Journal of Stanford Blockchain.
Yeah.
And cryptocurrency, so, you know.
Stephen's great. Stephen and I are friends. So.
Oh, you know him? Okay, we have a lot of mutual friends.
We do.
Okay.
I really like Stephen.
Yeah, he recently got appointed by the Ethereum Foundation as manager.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if that's the correct title, but I'd be interested to see the liability of the Ethereum Foundation as like a nonprofit. I'm intrigued to see if they could really like be classified as nonprofit, given the scope of, you know, and the character of the work that they do. So, I mean, like, in connections to the context of DAO and all that stuff, like, I thought it would be more interesting to explore right at this point. To
explore the liability
corporate liability or the general liability of a Ethereum Foundation, yeah, all that. I thought your approach was very interesting, like trying to test the algorithm and, you know, so I thought it was very,
Where is it incorporated? It's incorporated as a standard nonprofit, or is it one of their, like Switzerland has been doing some interesting little tweaks for their foundations?
to my knowledge, they're incorporated as like a standard nonprofit, but they're really proclaiming themselves as we're not the general nonprofit.
Yeah.
We're not a tech company, we're not a general nonprofit. And I'm like, so how would you define the nature of their work and the nature of their government? So
I wish they were incorporated in the U.S. where I've got half a clue. I can't. It's like, when I got dragged in during the ICO craze, I'm sure you remember, into trying to understand and do legal analysis when part of the structure was having a foundation under Swiss law that was sort of independent, which always seemed like, in some of the ones that I saw, seemed like a bit like an invasion, fishy, and I didn't like it because the underlying reasons were not pure. But nonetheless, I kind of know that I know it's complicated, and I know that I don't understand how to assess what a probable legal outcome would be, such as liability and a classic legal outcome. So I would imagine someone that knows Swiss law really well with corporate law would be really helpful to join in that. Are you licensed to practice it?
I'm a law student actually, so I'm not a licensed professional yet.
In Switzerland?
No.
Or in Baltimore?
In Baltimore.
Okay.
But I do have some attorneys who are very interested in the matter, and they are coming from the government side, so they know the law and what the government, you know, like the regulators say.
The law in the United States or in Switzerland?
I'm joining Hogan Lovells after I graduate, and there are some very interesting, you know, people on the Hill who are with the firm and very interested in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, it sounds, I mean, have you thought about reaching out to Steve to see about doing something, like an analysis
I'd
of...
be happy to help. Like, even if I'm not, you know, directly part of it, I'd be happy to, like, connect you with people. And I mean, I think, like,
Personally, not interested in the liability of the Ethereum Foundation.
Okay, yeah.
But if,
No,
to the extent
I mean,
that you are, I
the
would think
topic that
Steve
you were-
might be the right guy to set something up.
I mean, I'm not trying to, like, dig deeper into, like, what Ethereum Foundation is doing. Like, it's generally, I feel like the governance structure of the blockchain scene is a little, you know, outstanding so far. So I thought, you know, your approach is very
Right, and what John's talking about is sort of very much a niche on the general liability thing, but I think it's a core one because it kind of gets to, what can we and what can't we expect of these smart contracts and other automated and autonomous processes, and how much weight should we or shouldn't we put on them. And then it raises the deeper questions, something I didn't mention here, is so in the UK, they have a new AI policy draft that they put out just like 3 weeks ago, and they're looking to aggressively reform and basically allow exceptions to certain regulations to permit companies, basically, and maybe law firms, to lean on AI systems for the provision of certain narrow context, domain-bounded legal advice. So, some things like tax and some other things are pretty well-bounded, arguably, and then also certain financial advice, where you have to be a licensed financial broker or an advisor or whatever it is language. But they want to try to get ahead. They want to be like the Delaware of AI. And what occurred to me is for legal advice and for financial advice, these are both examples, like I mentioned before, where there's fiduciary duties that apply. And it sort of raised the question, when you have a legal entity that is autonomous, the last leg in the puzzle is the UK further said that it's necessary under all of these reforms to make sure that there's a natural or corporate person who is responsible for the AI. Makes perfect sense to me, anyway, because AI is not up to the job. But let's say you have a corporate person responsible for the AI. What if the corporate person's a Wyoming LLC that is itself an AI? Now we have the fox guarding the hen house in a way, and so we don't have this protection anymore. And I think it raises questions about what is this entity type, and what, and is, like, for example, might it be desirable to have a new entity type that's a I don't know how to say I don't have the words, but something like a limited function entity. So, like, you're authorized to do this thing. You take the input, you do the thing, you mint the currency, and you give it to that person, according to the smart contract. And that's what you do. And you're a limited liability company, or something like that. But I think that's one way to go. But anyway, there's unsolved problems here. So get to work. It's great to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hey, Bill.
Hey. Langley. I'm ready. Get it. and then to see like how close and different it is and what's the gap. And so I know I kind of understand, not that I like it, but I understand the NPRE. The assumptions are all pretty like well-worn. It's calibrated over like many decades now, and we kind of know what to expect. It's well modeled. So I feel like it might be a way to start to get like a spotlight on what's the same and what's different, and we can also do a little bit of interpretability in the GPT-3 model in this case to sort of see what some of the back propagations, I guess, to see like how it changes some of these conclusions. The second thing though is like, I think the most important thing is kind of like, so let's say you train the model enough so that it gets really good at passing the test. Then I think that raises, now we can finally talk about the real thing, which is the same with humans. Like, okay, so now we have this like lawyer that's good at passing the test, they're good at like structuring an IPO, but they have actually like completely illegal or immoral deeper motivations, and they're just either lying about this or they're doing the wrong thing. Or worse yet, they're like a good lawyer that's technically within the rules and yet perverting justice, you know? And I think that's the big inquiry, and that's called now in certainly in OpenAI and Google DeepMind and some of the cutting edge places. They call that ethical alignment. That's the new language that we're using. Alignment is the language that we're using. Yeah, but I don't know if I put it in the blog post, but I just tweeted an article to like the best stuff on it. So if you look at, if you look here, someone was just talking about Pat Moon was talking about my thing, and that's not true. And I put it.
Hey everyone, if you could take your seats. If you could take your seats.
This is an amazing blog post.
Hey everyone, if you could come in and take your seats, please. We're going to start the keynote shortly. Jonathan, do you have what you need? Okay. Come on in, come on in. Grab your seats, grab your seats. Come on in, come on in. Give everyone 30 seconds. All right. I am so super thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker, Jonathan Askin. Jonathan Askin is, to me, is a professor. He is a mentor. He's a friend. My career wouldn't be what it is in any sense if it weren't for Jonathan Askin. I wanted to share just a few, maybe 2-3 anecdotes or data points about Professor Askin. I first met Jonathan through one of my childhood friends, this guy named Fred Benenson, and Fred knew I was going to Brooklyn Law School. This was over the summer, right before I started school, which is 14 years ago, I guess, something like that. And I was involved in the New York tech community, going to meetups and things like that. I had friends who were in that community as well. And so I was talking to my friend Fred, and he said, "You're going to Brooklyn Law School." It's like, "You got to meet this guy, Jonathan Askin. He's amazing." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Where do I find this guy? I guess I'll see him when I'm on campus." He goes, "No, come to the meetup. If you go to the New York Tech meetup, he will 100% be there. You'll know him. He's going to wear a faux leather trench coat. You won't miss him, bald head, circling through the audience." And so I did exactly that, and it was unmistakable. We was at the happy hour right after New York Tech meetup. I showed up. There you were in the corner. You had a bunch of people corralled around you, and I walked up. I said, "Hi, I'm Jameson Dempsey. I'm starting law school. I heard I'm supposed to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to working together." And he Jonathan said, "That's great. I can't wait to see you on campus." Our relationship only grew from there. I was first year student in your telecom law class. I thought I wanted to do like white collar defense or antitrust or something like that, but was always interested in the intersection of law and technology. And Jonathan encouraged me to join one of the most innovative law school classes for the time. Rather than give a syllabus, he just had a blog roll, a list of blogs that we should read. This is 2009 or to 2010. He said, look, technology law, technology policy, and legal tech, it all moves way too fast for a textbook. So you can buy the textbook and spend $150, but you'd be much better served reading someone like Mike Masnick or something like that. Read all of the blogs of the day, read tech news, understand what's going on, understand the challenges that technologists face, see the world from their perspective, and then use your legal skills in order to help them out. And it wasn't just talk through the class. He lived that in his practice and in encouraging students, founding one of the first technology law clinics that provides free legal services to early stage technology startups. That's the Blip Clinic. And we got really hands-on. We represented decentralized social media companies trying to figure out how to do their privacy policies sent between different nodes. We represented trade associations or trade organizations like Comply. We represented tech companies that were just women-led tech companies that were just getting off the ground in New York City and needed to incorporate their business. And so not only did we have to leverage our legal skills, we had to understand their products, their services. We had to go to meet with them. As a part of our clinic, we would go out to co-working spaces, and we'd have sit-ins where we would talk with entrepreneurs about their challenges, and we'd learn ways to speak with technologists about their problems and to represent them in a really empathetic way. I took this into my career, and I know that many of the Blipicians did as well. Raise your hand if you're a Blipician in the room. Awesome. Jonathan has inspired the lives of all of these people and me, which is why I'm so excited to have Jonathan as our keynote speaker. And so the last thing that I want to say is, I remember, I think I maybe posted this on Twitter if you can find it. But after being a student, I was his research assistant and ended up working closely through law journals and through Blip as a mentor to some of the next generation of students that I graduated. And I remember getting a Gmail message from Phil one day. He's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" Not too much. I was clerking in that building right there. And he said, "Hey, we're having a legal hackathon." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out." I was like, "Awesome, that sounds cool." I think I said that sounds effing cool or something. But anyway, and so I took part of the day on April 15th of 2012 to come here to Brooklyn Law School in the Moot Courtroom just down over here to watch what was the birth of the Legal Hackers movement. And like I said at the very beginning, watch the introductory talks that Phil and Jonathan gave. They're so present. They set the template for what we've done over the course of the next 10 years. From my perspective, all I'm doing is helping to implement their vision to the extent that I can and spread their good word. And so Jonathan has had an influence not only on me, not only on many of the people here in the room, but on the world at large in making people think differently about the way that law can be practiced and about the way that technology can be used to improve law, legal practice, and tech policy. So without any further ado, welcome Jonathan Askin.
So first of all, Jameson is way too humble. He ran with Legal Hackers in a way that was just astounding, as all of you know. I see over here at this table over here at least 3 of the major pioneers, the organizers of you'll see a picture of them in a moment. But we certainly got a bunch of pioneers here. What Phil started, Jameson has just exploded, as you all know. I mean, without Jameson, I don't know to what extent we would actually exist as this 200-chapter global organization. One thing I loved, Yeah, I'm glad you didn't see me when he was talking because I was crying. If you looked at one of the charts that Jameson showed was essentially all of the global chapters and then pictures of him at all of these chapter meetings. This is a secret. This should be our great open secret. Whenever I travel, I look to see who are the legal hackers, where I'm going, and can we organize an event. All of us should be doing that very thing. I mean, Jameson has been on a 5-year world tour, an 8-year world tour, I think, just going from legal hacker event to legal hacker event. And for me, it's been sensational. I was in Ukraine with the Ukraine legal hackers the week that Donald Trump told Zelensky, I just need a favor from you, though. And it was the Ukrainian legal hackers who were telling me what was going on. In any case, I have about 85 slides. Usually I get through about 5 slides in an hour. So I don't know what the hell I'm going to get through. And a lot of this is just never been vetted, completely beta testing with you all. I would be thrilled if I don't go through more than 1 slide. Here's what I want. And I am not a podium lecturer. I am a clinician. I made a concerted decision that I was not going to be lecturing to students and avoid teaching them crap that they won't be using when they go practice in the real world. I mean, truth of the matter is, law school historically has been the only trade school from which you graduate in which you don't know how to practice your profession. Well, that's insane for a trade school. We've got to learn in law schools, and I'll be at the workshop on transforming legal education. I was raised by a clinical teacher. My dad started the constitutional litigation clinic at Rutgers, and he'd come home every day and say, I can't believe they pay me to do this. He was general counsel for the ACLU, and as a result, got to bring all of his ACLU cases and work with them with students. That was real-world application in a law school setting. So my secret is I stole my dad's model, I put an internet overlay on it, and I use you all to do just the work that I want to be doing. That to me is the model for legal education. So I want that to be the model for my talk, our discussion. All right, that's the objective here. So please don't be shy. I know none of you, most of you are not shy. This is our chance. It's the first time in 3 years we've actually gotten a chance to get together. So I don't want to waste that. I loved hearing the buzz during lunch. I will love to hear the buzz during this talk and during the workshop. So don't be shy, interrupt me, shout it out. Seriously, I am playing completely out of my depths. In fact, I need to take a couple data points. Any historians in the room? Yes. None. Any evolutionary biologists in the room? Excellent. None. Any psychologists in the room? Anyone with a psych degree? Okay. Anyone who thinks they're an unlicensed therapist? Yeah, all right. Let's see. Any literature professors? Yes. Any lawyers? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. All right, so look, the reason I ask is I'm talking about things I know. I mean, if there's no evolutionary biologists in the room, I know something about evolutionary biology. If there's no psychologists in the room, I know a little bit about psychology. If there's no literature professors in the room, I know something about literature. They're all going to be weaved in. And I'm weaving these things in large part because that is what I think we as legal hackers are supposed to be doing. We are not supposed to be working in a vacuum. We are supposed to be working across disciplines. We are supposed to be the bridge, I think, between these disciplines. We are not just isolated legal problem solvers. We are lawyers as part of a bigger ecosystem. And I suspect, our ambition, in fact, I'll walk through some of this. Yeah, all right. When I talk, just bear this in mind. There's a couple caveats. All models are wrong, but some are useful. I don't think this one's a cliche yet. I'll go through a couple more cliches. Here's the big cliche. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. So this, as our 10-year bookend for legal hackers, is our time to assess what we were thinking about 10 years ago, what we're thinking about now, and how do we become more prescient? What were we missing 10 years ago that would have helped us to know? If we could have taken a time machine and gone back 10 years, what would we have changed? What would we have focused on? So here's what we got. I don't know who the hell said this. I stole it from someone else and applied legal tech to it. Legal tech is like compound interest. Nothing seems to change year to year until it compounds. That's where we are. So 2 years after the first legal hackathon, I don't know, we were still dealing with the same issues. It didn't seem that much different. Now I think, and we'll have this discussion, how dramatically has the world changed? And how dramatically will it change in 10 years so that we're, okay.
All right. 2012. 2012. Who knows what? Do you remember that we half of your generation, at least, maybe a tenth of my generation, were thinking the world was going to end in 2012? The Mayan prophecies, right? Maybe not many lawyers, but all the New Age theorists were thinking, this is the end, or is it the beginning? Certainly, there were dramatic things happening in 2012. In fact, part of the reason there was a legal hackathon in 2012, and this gang over here could correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, why did we have the first legal hackathon in 2012? What was going through all your heads? You were all 3Ls in 2012, right? Why did you want to do a legal hackathon in 2012? Did you all have jobs in 2013? What the hell was going on in the legal profession that you three, were you all of you? No, you weren't in my telecom class, but these were absolutely, what? You were on my telecom class? All right. They were absolute stars in my telecom class, like you couldn't believe. I mean, really? Okay, yeah. They were brilliant. They weren't getting jobs. Why the hell weren't you getting jobs in 2012? So the financial meltdown of 2008, they were the victims, some might say, of that. They were victims. I was a beneficiary. And I think most of us were the beneficiaries due to the fact that they could not get jobs. So they thought they had to be more innovative than their peers. What's that? Right, right. So a lot of these folks, actually it was the year before you all, they all got deferrals. That was my other great blessing. Oh my God, 2011, I think it was, a bunch of my STAR graduates were going to big law. Their law firm said, you know what, take a 1-year deferral. We're going to give you half your salary. Go work for a nonprofit. So I poached one of my STAR graduates to work with me in the Blip Clinic and revamp all of our services, our processes. So for me, that was a blessing. I didn't pay him. What was it? Clifford Chance paid him to work for us. Wonderful. So in any case, we didn't know where the world was going. 2012 was. You can't see. I like to use some big words, but they're not even viewable. Eschatology and protology. I think I made a protology, but eschatology is the study of the end of the world. I was thinking we had half of the world thinking that the world was going to come to an end, and half the world thinking maybe this is the dawning of a new age. Yeah, question for you all. What do you remember? Who was a practicing lawyer 10 years ago? Enough of you. Do you remember what you were doing, what you were focusing on, what you were thinking about 10 years ago? Were you thinking about legal hacking? Were you doing traditional law? Were you in academia? Anyone want to say what their big issues were? Yeah.
I was just graduating law school trying to figure out how to get into entertainment law.
How to get to entertainment law?
Yeah.
Okay. And were the jobs available?
Oh my God, it was awful, and I was coming from much lower level school, which didn't help.
Yeah.
But I got one.
And you were graduating around that time.
I was working as a lawyer in New York, then I was trying to move back to Germany. It was very difficult to find a job in Germany. Nobody wanted lawyers. It's very different now. But back then, you can almost have to beg for a law firm to employ you.
Yeah, we're seeing. By the way, all of my graduates are getting great offers now. Whether or not they're taking them is another story. But this is a very different world. 10 years ago, they were saying the legal market is dead and it's going to be dead forever. Law school admissions were dropping precipitously. Law school admissions now, well, this year I think we took a little dip, but they've been on the uprise for most of the past 10 years, in part because it's a safe place where you know you're going to find a job at the end of the battle. So I took a copy of the old brochure from the first legal hackathon to see what we were thinking about then. And I got to say, no offense to our organizers at the first legal hack. Did I see John Randall in the room too? But where is he? All right, yes. All right, another one of the pioneers. John, you're not practicing law now, are you?
No.
Yeah. Right. Web developer. And John was terrific in bringing all these. You brought in Diaspora to us, didn't you?
I did.
They were your buddies. If you don't remember Diaspora, they were the first company. They were 4 NYU kids. First company to get $200,000 on Kickstarter, which was brand new. One of the founders, one of the original employees of Kickstarter was this Fred Benenson that Jameson mentioned. But Diaspora were these 4 kids from NYU who thought they were going to take down Facebook. They wanted to become the first open source, user-generated, privacy-sanctifying, IP-protecting social network. Got $200,000 for Kickstarter, dropped out of NYU, moved to the Valley, tried to bring down Facebook. Long story short, they had problems with their revenue model and things like that, trying to do good work. A lot of folks have adopted the concepts that Diaspora had pioneered about 10 years ago. In any case, our first legal hackathon, no offense to our pioneering founders, was really a talkathon, a hackathon on training wheels to a large extent. And so I look back at what we were talking about back then. We had a lot of talkers, big thinkers talking about big issues, mostly about civic participation, government transparency, very little talk about bona fide hacking. We weren't hackers. We were lawyers in a room trying to be hackers. I see a fellow, and part of the reason I think the legal hackers movement grew is because we figured out ways to branch out beyond just lawyers sitting in an isolation chamber talking amongst ourselves. I see Daza Greenwood back there, who's a lawyer, but a data scientist, an MIT Media Lab pioneer into bridging law and technology, started law.mit.edu. The MIT Computational Law Report, if any of you are writing, this is the best place for you to plant your articles. Much more mutable, much more robust, visually, functionally robust than a law review, faster posting times. Seriously, if you're thinking about writing in this space, I would make that your first go-to spot. Now, I'm on the editorial advisory board, so I have some biases, but it's always where I want to post. In any case, so I'm posting these pictures. Why am I posting these pictures? These were some of our brilliant speakers at the first hackathon, and they were talking big picture issues. Let's see, we got up here on the Andrew Riche, who ran for public advocate in New York probably 15 years ago, chaired Eric Adams' Tech Transition Committee, big player. Let's see, Tim Wu in the bottom left is now working for the White House, big thinker, coined the term net neutrality. Who else do we have here? This fellow in the bottom right was at Public Knowledge. He died last year. Who else do we have? Let's see. Oh, Lon Jacobs in the top right. Oh my God, talk about having the 2 worst jobs in the world. He was the general counsel for News Corp, Rupert Murdoch. He left that to work for, who's the only person worse than Rupert Murdoch? I can't remember who it is. Wait a second, who did he go work for? Anyone remember who Lon Jacobs went to work for? If you Google him, I swear to God, he went from working for Rupert Murdoch to the only person I thought was worse than Rupert Murdoch. Yeah. If you Google Lon Jacobs, you'll find out who it is. Oops. Oh, yeah. Nina Paley was the one Warren got us for that. So I'm leaving one person here. I'm leaving this one person here because he's actually the only one of them that's still in the room. Let's come back. Art Chang back there, who actually ran for mayor. I bullet voted for him for mayor last year. We had ranked choice voting, so you got to vote for the person you love, not necessarily the person you thought was going to win. But anyway, Art was a pioneer in voter rights and all sorts of things, New York City-centric, incubated, I don't know, how many dozen companies, had a huge incubator, funding, great stuff. Hired some of my graduates also, which is a nice point in his favor. So what were we thinking about? It was all Gov 2.0. Oh, I'm missing some slides. Gov 2.0, eGov. Remember SOPA, PIPA? Americans, the non-Americans might not know that this was our big battle against big media to protect. They were making this big push to protect IP rights and wanted Congress, had a couple bills pending in Congress to augment IP protection. And most of the, I guess, revolutionary law students were saying this was going to destroy the nascent web at the time. 10 years ago, it was still the nascent web. It was going to destroy free speech and communication online. So that was one of the first hacks we did was, can we, as lawyers at least, without many technologists, could we collaborate on writing a better piece of legislation that might offer up some IP protection to help the digital media empires not feel like they're going to be destroyed by China and free digital distribution, but at the same time maintain distribution channels on the free and open web. So I flagged some of the issues that we were thinking about then. Crowdsourcing, privacy policies, patent trolls, revenge porn trolls, crowdsourcing again, digital distribution and copyright, social responsibility. These are all, I mean, right now these seem like very mundane issues, right? But this was the core of what at least we as young law students and lawyers were thinking about. All right, none of the revolutionary concepts. Fair use, DMCA, trademark, anonymized web, IP public domain, net neutrality. All right, what's missing? What are we thinking about today that we weren't focused on then? If we did a hackathon, a hackathon today, what would you want to focus on? Maybe a little bit on those issues, but what are the hot item issues in your minds right now? What are you thinking about?
Data privacy.
Data privacy. In a more profound, now we had a limited amount of work on privacy policy reform. We were seriously just very rudimentary in the process. Daz's talk blew me away. I hope it blew everyone else away too. That is the revolution right there. How are we going to protect individual data in a world where that is the default revenue model? Diaspora failed for one big reason. They agreed not to monetize your data. You controlled your own user logs. You controlled your own data. How in the midst of a Facebook do you compete and get viral uptake when you have no way of monetizing your service? They were thinking maybe they were going to become a nonprofit like Wikimedia, or they were going to be a subscription service. It would have been a long slog for them to do that and actually take on Facebook, which had this absolute guaranteed 50-year revenue stream. What else are you thinking about now? What do you wish you were thinking about 10 years ago? I mean, what's the obvious one? What should we all have been thinking about right after 2008 and the big white paper? Yeah. Who's kicking themselves for not investing in Bitcoin circa 2009? Hell, I called my broker in 2012 and I asked him to get me Bitcoin. He said he didn't know how the hell to get it, and it's a flash in the pan. Don't go down. Yeah, I still talk to him about that. What else? So yeah, Bitcoin, blockchain.
I remember in 2012 that Facebook got weird after the Sandy Hook massacre. Suddenly, I just had moved to Germany and I saw my American friends, not all of them, but some, sharing this weird conspiracy stuff, which was for me new to see on Facebook so much. And then I think a year later I left because it wasn't unbearable.
Fake news was starting then? Misinformation. So how many of us were techno-utopians 10 years ago? I know I was. How many of you who were techno-utopians then are now sort of techno-dystopians? Yeah, I've had a flip too. So we were all very Pollyannish on what was going on, I think, with social media, or most of us were. Jameson said I spent every moment at a different meetup, and the New York Tech Meetup was all about new what we thought were virtuous social media algorithms and methods to help crowdfund, crowdsource. Everything was about the wisdom of the crowd and improving the algorithms for the social media networks. These algorithms, the Facebook algorithm, a lot of us thought was a good thing back then. Now we recognize that it's essentially created this deformed state where we're all living in our own echo chambers with information just compounding and driving us to extremes. To some extent, when we're supporting those algorithms, what are we doing now to fight those algorithms? What else would you have wished you were thinking about 10 years ago? Yeah, metaverse. So I made my quick list. I wanted folks to add. All right. So the quick list I had was we weren't really thinking about blockchain. We weren't thinking about the metaverse, and some of us were playing on Second Life. 20 years ago, I think I asked Second Life to let me be its chief justice. They laughed at me. There's going to be no issues to worry about in Second Life. Well, it turns out. Artificial intelligence, not many of us are thinking about. Gig economy, we didn't have any sessions at the first Legal Hackathon or anything about the sharing economy, gig economy stuff. Almost nothing about crowdfunding processes. The Jobs Act in America had not yet passed, which was our vehicle to open up the floor to equity crowdfunding. Kickstarter, I think, was just starting right around then. and they weren't doing anything for actual equity crowdfunding. In fact, Kickstarter is still true to its mission and claim they will never do equity crowdfunding. This was before any ICOs, before the ability to crowdfund through crypto and blockchain. Smart cities, a little bit. People were thinking a little bit about smart cities issues. Were any of you thinking about, so we had a talk earlier today about, where's Oscar? Oscar, I loved your talk. My students and I have been thinking for 10 years, how the hell do we create the L Corp, the responsible law firm? How do we take the B Corp concepts and create socially virtuous law firms? Are we somehow breaching our duty as vigilant advocates for our clients if we go down this path? How do we get some ethical rules or statutory mandate that we're actually allowed to do something that's good as opposed to just something that's good for our clients? I would love for us to be workshopping that issue. How do we create the B Corp for law firms, the B Corp for lawyers? And can we, maybe it's Legal Hackers that does this, can we have a Legal Hackers or other good housekeeping seal of approval on your lawyer's website that says you have been verified as a socially responsible good lawyer? Phil, you did the collective mark for Legal Hackers. You didn't, right? You did not do the certification mark for Legal Hackers. That's something we probably, what? It is a certification. Oh, it is? I thought it was just a collective. It's a collective mark. I'd like us to rethink, and maybe it's not Legal Hackers, but maybe there is a way for us to unite forces and create a set of rubric, a set of principles for good actors in the legal profession, and then have the certification mark, and ideally everyone in this room, and then all the legal hackers around the world and other good actors will be demonstrating. Look, when clients used to come to me and my students, occasionally we'd ask them, do you want to become a B Corp or a benefit corp or some other form of socially responsible corporation? And early on, most of our advisors, most of the law firms would say, don't push your clients in that direction. You're just going to hamstring them. They'll get no good out of it. They can try to be good people anyway, but we don't know what the rules of the road are now because of the millennials and the Gen Xer here. The Gen Zers. All of a sudden, we've got these social impact investment funds. People are being, at least some portion of the population, really cares about investing in socially responsible corporations. Well, maybe they should be investing in sending their services to socially responsible lawyers by the same token. Globalism, yeah. I have a couple of, so because of the aspect ratio, some of my lines are missing. But what else were we thinking about? What did I miss? This is either what were you thinking about 10 years ago or what do you wish you were thinking about 10 years ago? Yeah. Legal automation. And how does that work in a world dominated by the lawyers, the gilded class of lawyers? Yeah. So this must have been 12 years ago. These two MIT scientists, engineers, came to me and the students and said, we want to create a free, open platform of legal contracts that will be mutable, and lawyers, young lawyers especially, law students, would get to populate it, put some branding on it. But it was essentially going to be an open repository of legal documents. It is. Docracy. It was since bought by a company called eDocs. It still exists. It probably is the single largest repository of open source legal documents in the world. At least it was. It may still be that. If you look at it, actually, the single biggest poster of legal documents is a Blip grad who is now, he went to ThrillList and then BuzzFeed and then 9 Media. He's now the general counsel for a company called Garbo, a former Blip client. But if you look at Docracy, you'll see his name more than anyone else's name. He basically cut his teeth and made his reputation by being the largest poster of legal documents, crowdsourced legal documents on Docracy. There's many good things we could do with Docracy as an open source legal repository. It's a great test bed. Any of you who are building AI algorithms for contracts, this is maybe a good place for you to get access to just a vast amount of free legal documents for your testing purposes. What else? So legal automation, yeah, just a gleam in the eye of a lot of people. Now it's on everyone's radar, yeah. So and why is that? You know, I always lament that to some extent, you could be a radical lawyer, but still you're going to be procedurally, professionally pretty conservative. You know, most lawyers, you go to law school because you want some level of security. Hell, you go into legal academia because you want even more security. But yeah, we've been using, Tom was talking about how Germany is, I wasn't sure if he said 15 or 50 years behind, whatever it is.
50 years behind you,
yeah.
in the US, but you're 50 years behind, so
Yeah, behind. Right, so the fax machine, lawyers were using, what? Yeah. You're right. So I got to say, the early years of Legal Hackers. Oh yeah, I mentioned DAZA. I didn't continue with my mentioning of DAZA. DAZA was our secret sauce to some extent in the early years as Legal Hackers was growing, because we were seriously just a bunch of idiot lawyers with our own knowledge bases, no real sense of the web, of technology, dynamic systems, what have you. We knew the law, and that was really about it. So our secret sauce, DAZA came to Illegal Hackers, must have been 8 years ago, I don't know. And all of a sudden, things triggered. All of a sudden we had MIT as our technological partner, not just DAZA, but DAZA's network of folks. And all of a sudden that all came together. So now what was talkathons became legitimate hackathons, I think. Now we still got a long way to go, but it's a matter of bringing more folks like DAZA's network into the room. The beauty about MIT was they were this world-renowned technology school without a law school of their own. It meant they were sort of this neutral arms merchant who could offer great services to all the lawyers and law students without feeling like they owned it until they did their law.mit.edu stuff. So 10 years ago, I was Pollyannish. I suspect a lot of you were Pollyannish. It was the Occupy was taking the world by storm. Concepts like the sharing economy, the Arab Spring, we thought was going to revolutionize the Middle East and bring it into some sense of modern democracy. Post-racial America, we thought we had a black president, that our racial issues were behind us, or many of us did. Some of you might have been smarter or more prescient than I. The end of history, right? The end of history, everything, the liberal world order was upon us. So that's not the case. What's changed? What are your theories on what we think has changed? I mean, do people think that's the world we're living in? Is this the Pollyannish world? We got a hand? What? I don't see a hand. Yeah. What's changed? Yeah, Art. Yeah, and so capital. So, that's interesting because 10, 15 years ago, before the economic meltdown, people thought, liberal democracy meant regulated capitalism, probably. There was a way to harness capitalism for the broadest public good. Capitalism had defeated communism, and it was going to create this liberal world order. Economic meltdown comes, capitalism run amok. So was it unregulated capitalism without antitrust oversight? What were the real problems?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, if you believe Evil Geniuses, the thesis there, that it was the funding of the extreme capitalists of the takeover of the legal industry by funding alternative legal and economic theories at schools like MIT and Harvard and Yale and Stanford, and making previously extreme ideology part of the mainstream conversation.
So what ideologies are you can you name some offenders or what ideology they perpetrated?
Yeah, so the Koch brothers, the Koch family, starting in the 1970s, gathered a group of far-right industrialists, these ruthless industrialists, to conceive of a long-term strategy, a multi-decade strategy, to get their ideas inculcated into American thought and to be legitimized as a way to push against what they viewed as the liberal communist takeover of America that led up to the 1970s.
So look at me as an example. Am I part of the problem in that I was very Pollyannish on the big tech players? I thought Google was going to be true to its core mission, don't be evil.
Capital, what we always used to say in campaign finance is follow the money, because the money tells all about everything.
Mark, I don't want to point you out. I suspect you have a million retorts to that concept. Maybe it's for another time? Okay. I made my list of things that I think have changed in the past 10 years that sort of disrupted what I thought was the upward trajectory of society and humanity and the planet. Let's move on. All right. So 10 years ago, first legal hackathon. Phil springboards it. Jameson takes it to the next level. We become global. We're living in, to a large extent, mostly isolated silos, doing our own thing, doing our own hackathons over a weekend. Very little communication, I think, between chapters. Who said that? It was the Philly folks who said it's a shame that we do these hackathons and there's great momentum and then it sort of dies on the vine afterwards. Where's the momentum? That's what I think we were doing those first few years. Nothing had been global, nothing had been virtualized. We were, a lot of us, thinking about the same things and building cool stuff, but no one was building on the backs of the genius that came 2 weeks before. That's still to some extent the case, and that's something I hope this weekend we can resolve a little bit of. But evolutionary biologists, glad none of you in the room. There are essentially three ways that at least life forms evolve. One is divergent evolution, where you start with a common ancestor and then they diverge based on environmental circumstances until the two ultimate species look nothing like each other and can't replicate. Not a place I think we want legal hackers to go to unless we can come back together. Convergent evolution. Maybe a legal hackers chapter starts somewhere else in the foreign world with very little guidance, or a legal tech group. A bunch of lawyers who know nothing about legal hackers start their own thing. But there are similar issues that they're dealing with. They converge. And all of a sudden, because of environmental, societal, global circumstances, everyone around the world is sort of doing the same thing, even though they started from different circumstances. I think what we see really, though, is parallel evolution among us. All right? We started with this common thread. We went off, especially during the pandemic. There wasn't that much communication. There's some virtual communication, but it's tough. And we've all been building our own communities. This is the first time in about 3 years we've gotten a chance to come back together physically and talk about what that means. How have we diverged? What can we learn from each other? That's a large part what I hope this weekend is about, and that's what I hope when we ultimately figure out what our best means of global collaboration are, that we can really learn from one another's experiences and not live in these perpetual vacuums. Okay. You can't read this, but I assume most of you know some of these stories, that Newton and Leibniz came up with calculus simultaneously. It's just sort of remarkable that at least two geniuses came up with the same concept when for 2,000 years no one had even dreamed it possible. Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace came up with theories of evolution simultaneously. We know Darwin, we don't really know Alfred Russel Wallace, but they were, there was this zeitgeist at the moment when the world was ripe for these new theories to take root. Something happened that laid the foundation for these new theories. Newton was perhaps the greatest genius to ever be known in humanity, but he wasn't working in a vacuum. He was working on what came before him. Darwin and Wallace the same. Telephone, Alexander Graham Bell gets credit for it. Some say maybe he cheated to get credit for it. Elijah Gray came up with the concept of a telephone simultaneously, but his uncle didn't work for the Patent and Trade Office. Microchip built simultaneously by two folks. We see this time and again constantly. People coming up with the same idea, some yelling, you infringed on my invention, my patent, but genius can be simultaneous. So the question is which path we're going to go down. You can't even see some of the path. how am I doing on time? I don't want to tell too many stories. I want to tell a couple anecdotes. Does this
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Crap. Does this picture ring a bell to anyone? Does it mean anything to anyone? Who raised their hand? You know the story? Do you want to tell the story? Or you want me to tell the story? I love this story. I don't know how much I'll tell. And the story may be apocryphal. It's been, a lot of folks have said that the guy who came up with this historical hypothesis was playing with facts a lot. But the theory is essentially that the modern American railroad is, 4 feet 8 inches wide, 4 meters 8 inches wide, is that size for a reason, and that reason goes back to the ancient Roman roads. All right, because we built our railroads based on British carriages, which had to be a certain size because the Romans had built the roads, and the roads went all the way up to England, and you had to make sure that the wheels would fit in the ruts on the mud roads. So therefore, the wheels had to be a certain distance apart, and when it came to America, we had those same carriages, and all of a sudden we had the ruts, and it was easiest to build our railroads along those ruts as well. So that was the length, the size of our railroads, and those Roman ruts had to be that size because their wheels were that size, and their wheels were that size because it had to be just a little bit wider than the butt of a horse. All right, the rear end of a horse was a certain size, and the wheels had to be a little bit wider than the size of that horse. Now, the guy takes it one step further. He says, our booster rockets should be bigger than they are. In an ideal world, if we could have started from scratch, we would have built shuttle booster rockets somewhat larger. But they had to be that size because we had to transport them over the railroad. And you had, so that they could be no larger than a little bit wider than the railroad. Did I miss any piece of that? All right, so that's the concept of adaptation theory. Now, I love his final quote. Can you read? Oh, yeah. His final quote is, ancient horses' asses control almost everything, and current horses' asses are controlling everything else. So the story, whether true or not, still is based on, I think, a very true concept, and that's that we are building this world not from scratch, not on a green field, but on a brown field. We've got to work with what we came before us. And there's no truer circumstance than in the law. All right? A giraffe has its weird shape because it had to adapt to its environment. I teach telecom law. My STAR students all right in this room. If we could have started telecom from scratch, if we could have built the internet from scratch, we would not have used what came first. Telecom started because people wired houses using essentially barbed wire, and the copper wiring worked well enough to extend voice communication from one person, one farm to the next farm. And then we ended up with our archaic system of wires all over the world. If we could have done it from scratch, we would have buried fiber immediately, and we would have created a perfect allocation of spectrum for exactly the perfect service that it would have been best utilized for. Well, that's not what we had. We've got a hodgepodge of spectrum used for archaic services that don't make sense for what they were used for, and various regulatory bodies have to reconfigure it to somehow juggle it and buy back spectrum when they can from its licensees to reconfigure it for better purposes. We're still stuck with copper infrastructure. We're still stuck with 10-digit dialing. These are all things, if we had built the internet from scratch, we would not have done it this way. But it's what we got. So in law, we are stuck with the analog logs of the world. It should not be that way, but it's going to be that way for a long time until we, the people in this room, figure out, we did this in the SOPA PIPA battle. What are we as legal revolutionaries going to do to morph the law to better suit the needs of new ventures? Every time a client comes in to me and my students, and we think, oh, that's a great idea, it should exist. But wait, it can't exist because of the law that says it can't exist. What you're doing is illegal. Well, I say to my students, and I hope the other academics in here say it to their students, and I hope the lawyers in this room say it to their clients. If the idea is great, and it should exist, and the only reason it doesn't exist is because the law says it can't exist, is the idea wrong or is the law wrong? Right. We in this room probably all agree the law is wrong. But how do you change the law? We've got to do two things in Legal Hackers. Legal Hackers, the mission is to use technology to improve the law and legal process, and to morph the law to better suit the needs of new ventures. How many of us are actually working in government, working with government to morph the law to better suit the needs of new ventures or to better suit the needs of society? That should be half our mission, not just using technology to hack legal process. So I say, look, there's the theory of punctuated equilibrium that grew out of Darwin. It's not a steady growth from old species to new species. There are these punctuated moments, environments change, circumstances change, a mutation occurs, and all of a sudden there's a dramatic change in the life on Earth. Well, that's what we're going through in technology and the law. We should be grateful. We are living through an inflection point, probably the greatest inflection point in human history. The internet, digital technology, globalism have all intersected in the early 21st century to allow remarkable changes in the way humans interact and communicate, the way we govern things, be it AI, be it blockchain, be it digital transmission, what have you. These are all intersecting. And they would be happening a lot faster if lawyers would get off their butt and think creatively and work with the technologists and work with government. I used to run an event in DC every year called the Peripheral Visionary Summit. And the goal of the Peripheral Visionary Summit was to lock the policymakers, the legislators in the room, the regulators in the room, and bring in the technologists and force the government people to keep their mouths shut. It's tough enough to do, but if you can get them to keep their mouths shut and listen to futurists and technologists say what could happen if they change the law in this direction, that I think we need more of. And that should be the focus of Legal Hackers. We should be, I think, a bridge between technologists, lawyers, and government, and forcing government to think about the possibilities. So I want to say a couple more things. Do I have any time left?
4 minutes.
4 minutes? Crap, what's my best story to finish on? All right. All right, does anyone know this story? Who's seen Charlie Wilson's War? Oh, really? So few. All right, good. All right. I'm going to read the story. On his 16th birthday, this is the Zen master story, a great Zen master. You may know it in another context. I love when Philip Seymour Hoffman says it in Charlie Wilson's War. It's the concept of we'll see and the law of unintended consequences. On his 16th birthday, the boy gets a horse as a present. All of the people in the village say, "Oh, how wonderful." The Zen master says, "We'll see." One day, the boy gets thrown off the horse and hurts his leg. He's no longer able to walk, so all the villagers say the horse is cursed. How terrible. The Zen master says, "We'll see." Time passes, and all of the other young men get sent off to fight in a war, but this boy can't fight because of his leg. All of the villagers say, "How wonderful." The Zen master says, "We'll see." It's a Shaggy Dog story that goes on forever, essentially. But the concept is, we don't know what our acts are going to do. Maybe this is a decent way to stop. This is not where I wanted to stop at all. But 10 years ago, these things were happening that we were working on. We don't really know the consequences of our action. I can't tell you how many good things thought I've done in my life that ended up having terrible consequences. A story I would never forget. I must have been 8 years old. There was a dog in the middle of the highway. And I was freaking out. Cars coming both ways. It's probably the worst moment of my life, now that I think about it. I was calling this dog I was trying to save the dog. I couldn't stop traffic. I was 8 years old. So I called this dog to come to me to try to get it out of traffic. Dog gets hit by a car. This is, to me, is the worst. This is, we'll see, the law of unintended consequences. Try to save a dog, I killed a dog. Last two examples. Does anyone know that John F. Kennedy was almost vice president, Adlai Stevenson's vice president? For the foreigners, this might not mean anything. How different would the world have been if John Kennedy had been the unsuccessful vice presidential running mate of the failed presidential candidate Adlai Stevenson? Would we see President Nixon in 1960 instead of 1968? Would we not have seen Watergate? We would not have seen new laws coming out of Watergate, the Presidential Records Act, for instance, that would have led to these battles right now where we're fighting with Donald Trump to get access to all of his presidential records. Gorbachev had, I think, wonderful intentions, perestroika, glasnost. Look what Russia's become in the wake of Gorbachev. Good intentions gone bad. The road to hell built with good intentions. Bear that in mind. I don't want to leave us on a negative note. I think we are here to change the world for the better. We should always bear in the back of our mind that what we do may have ripple effects and consequences that were unintended. Oy, there's a million more. Save it for another time. I love you all. Let's keep the momentum going, and now it's workshopping.
All right. Okay, cool. It is workshop time. Is Jonathan, that list of questions that I sent you?
Oh, yeah, further down, keep going, plug it every two slides. It's almost coming up.
Almost. It was, I think it was slide 346. I passed it? Hold on. Here's my questions. Awesome. Okay, we are going to go into workshops now. I wanted to put up these questions. I sent these to Jonathan when we were talking about the keynote. I want to have them up here just for folks to think about. As we think about legal hackers over the course of the past 10 years and for the next 10 years, let's think about what assumptions we had in 2012 that have proven correct. What did we get wrong? What are some of the assumptions that we have today? And how can we check those and continue to refine them over time? How can we as legal hackers, this has come up in a bunch of the keynotes, move from a quick fix mindset to something of more sustainable change? How can we work more collaboratively across chapters, across disciplines? And then also, starting today, what are the seeds that we should be planting now for 10 years in the future? And what's one thing, and really, take out a piece of paper, write it down in your notes app, write an email to yourself. What is one thing that you can do today, in addition to all the stuff you're already doing, to push things in the right direction? And I encourage you all to ask each other that question, and think critically about that, and then take that with you going forward. This is a big one for me, is let's try to avoid becoming another part of the hype machine. I think that's one of the things we think about. When we look back at 2012, there are lots of things that are hyped up right now. It's really easy to get sucked into that. It's easy to throw another hyped up legal tech event. If everyone is zigging, how can we zag? Or in German, I learned this, if everyone is ticking, how can we tack? And then at the same time, how can we provide a clear-eyed perspective as lawyers, as technologists on this sector without being naysayers or wallflowers on the revolution, right? And so with that, we're going to move into our workshops. If you are running a workshop, could you come up here to the front, please? I just want folks to see you. And then I'm going to quickly introduce the workshops. Okay, awesome. Hi. We have Kat and Conan and Laura and Raffaele, and Oscar is there as well, and he's going to be helping out. And they are going to be running 3 parallel workshops. As I mentioned at the beginning, please choose one and stick with one. And also, I'm going to do my best to cap each one at 20 people. I think we should be around 60 if we're a little less than that. The idea is to make them equal. So if you see 2 that are equally interesting, go with the one that has fewer people. But at the same time, if you have particular expertise, if you run a law firm and you want to join the legal practice session, please do that. If you are a legal educator or a law student and you want to focus on the future of legal education, please do that. So here we go. Legal hacking law practice. Raffaele, do you want to take 30 seconds to a minute to describe what you're going to be doing?
Thank you. During our workshop, we will be focusing on how law firms should or could change in the next future under several points of view. First of all, business models and roles of lawyers, expertise of lawyers, and the relationship between lawyers and sustainability, including the form of benefit corporation, and the use of technology, how technology could change how lawyering is done. We will be divided in 3 small groups, tackling these 3 specific topics. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, our next workshop, Legal Hacking for Social Impact. Laura?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. In this workshop, we're going to try to think about how, as legal hackers, we can be more supportive to our communities. We're going to probably start with what has been done, could have been done with Ukraine war. And we're going to try to think, reflect, and invent how to get prepared, better prepared, to be more supportive for future crises, which unfortunately we can infer will happen, and how as legal hackers globally and locally we can help and be more supportive.
All right, finally, Kanan and Kat. And this, it says workshop 2, but it's workshop 3. Come on.
Hi. Kat and I will be running the workshop on legal education and the role it plays in legal hacking. What is needed to create lawyers of tomorrow that can continue to make change and can shape the world for a better integration of different stakeholders. In terms of how can we create the right kind of curriculum, how can we mentor them better, how can we push for the change agenda together with them. So that's going to be a lot of interaction, and people in the workshop will be kind of preparing model curriculums or model change policies. So that's what the session is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I think legal practice will stay here in the room. And then we have 2 classrooms that are going to have whiteboards and markers and all sorts of stuff, so it can be more interactive for the 2 other workshops. Those are both going to be on the 4th floor. Deborah, are you able to lead folks where they need to go? Okay, awesome. So join your workshop leaders and go forth, and you can all get going. And you'll be with them until 5 o'clock, at which point we're all going to come back here. Yep, 5 o'clock. Okay. Writer team. I just want to say thank you so much for sponsoring. I'm Jameson. Hey, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sponsoring. Participating. What are you thinking? Important perspective. The one with fewer people. Yeah, sure.
Then time goes by and you 2 are together. So.
There we go. Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Which one are you going to go to? Legal education. social impact is fair. Yeah. Social impact in education. No, it's a small compressor there. I think you can do it. To merge? Yeah, everyone wants to merge.
Okay, you want the table or without the table? You want the table? Let me get closer then.
Hey everyone, there's going to be plenty of time to chat. If you could go to the workshop leader, go to the workshop that you would like to join, please. That would be really helpful. Go right away. If you want to do the legal practice one, come to legal practice right now. Group 1, come over there. If you want legal education, go to the back where Kanan is. If you want to do social impact, go to the back where Laura is.